At a lavish party, Prince Horus is being congratulated on turning 12 years old. His maids are all buzzing, knowing that at 12 he finally gets his magical aptitude tested. And this is the big one, the ceremony that determines his entire future. His staff is already betting on him getting a super strong element like fire or wind, but Horus himself does not seem so sure, looking a little worried about the whole thing. One of the maids gets a light scolding for gossiping so loudly about the prince's fate. He totally overhears them but plays it cool, pretending he cannot hear a thing. What a pro. Then it is time for the main event with the whole royal court gathered to watch. Horus steps up to the plate, placing his hand on the orb to reveal his destiny. His result is announced and it is sand. The room goes absolutely dead silent. Our boy is just completely stunned, not understanding what that even means. Meanwhile, the rest of the nobles are already looking at him like he is absolute garbage. He starts to panic, realizing from their faces that something is terribly, terribly wrong. Turns out sand is a single, useless attribute, basically a magic dead end for a royal. It is not technically powerless, but it might as well be in this high-stakes world. His own family calls him an inferior disgrace, declaring his life as a prince officially over. Heartbroken, the kid can only look up at his father as his entire world falls apart. Everything just flashes white, a harsh and sudden end to his former life. Now he is just the shame of the family, a concubine's son with a worthless power, and the final verdict comes down from on high. He is being exiled. He thinks back on his useless sand magic, still believing it could be something amazing. And just like that, he is dumped in the middle of a massive desert to be forgotten. Fighting back the despair, the kid steels himself for what is coming next. Screaming his defiance, he vows to survive and prove sand magic is perfect for this wasteland. With a new fire in his eyes, our boy gets straight to work. His first priority is finding water, whipping out a magic circle to start the search. He places a hand on the ground, connecting with the endless sea of sand. Unleashing a sand sense ability, he sends out ripples to map the terrain below. Concentrating hard, he feels a faint signal from deep beneath the surface. And bingo, he has located a source of water hidden under all those dunes. Now it is time to dig, but he is not using a shovel, he is using sand magic. He summons a literal wave of sand, riding it like a pro surfer, which promptly throws him headfirst into the hole he just made. Great form. Gasping for air, he realizes they exiled him to a desert expecting him to die. But he is standing on a freaking sand tsunami under the blazing sun, and he is absolutely loving it, declaring this desert is his perfect kingdom. With a newfound purpose, he steps forward into his new life. Next up on the what can sand do list, he starts creating a vortex. This ground begins to churn, swirling into a massive, inescapable spiral, revealing a colossal quicksand pit. Yeah, useless magic, my foot. Horus peers into his brand new quicksand trap, waiting for something to happen. And from the depths, a little bubbling starts, a clear sign of success. His face absolutely lights up. He did not just make a death pit, he found the water source. With water secured, he declares the next item on the agenda is a place to live. So he unleashes his sand magic again, this time to build a literal sand castle. This ground churns as massive pillars of sand shoot straight up into the sky, which quickly form into the towers of a ridiculously grand-looking fortress. Our boy looks pretty damn proud of himself for a kid who was just exiled. And honestly, he should be, because that is a 5-star desert palace right there. This interior, however, is a bit of a minimalist nightmare, just a giant empty box. He figures he can probably use his sand castle powers to spruce the place up a bit. With a single touch, the sand walls begin to shift and morph into intricate designs. Suddenly, the plain walls have columns and arches, looking much more regal. He strolls through his new home, deciding every castle needs some proper decor. Sand flows like water, creating shelves and rooms, a lobby, a kitchen, even a study. With his new life in the desert officially underway, Horus looks ready for anything. But it is lonely out here, so he builds himself a sand golem for protection and company. Finally, he crashes onto a newly made sand bed, completely exhausted from all the construction. Lying there, he realizes he still needs food, plants, and glass for the windows. Then the panic sets in as he remembers he also needs fur. Sand cannot exactly keep you warm. Horus decides to do a quick resource scan, using his sand sense to search the area. His search expands far beyond his lonely sandcastle, covering miles of empty dunes. Suddenly, his concentration is broken by an unexpected signal: something's out there. And it is not a resource. His sand sense shows someone has collapsed in the wasteland. He rushes outside, realizing they are also surrounded by a whole bunch of other signals. Without a second thought, our boy launches himself across the desert to investigate. His face is pure determination. He knows he has to get there fast. Arriving on the scene, he finds a traveler collapsed and surrounded by a pack of goblins. These guys are your classic, garden variety ugly, just itching for a fight. This traveler's loyal camel is trying its best to shield its unconscious owner. Beneath the hood, it is a young person, completely helpless against the monster horde, just as the goblins make their move, raising their clubs for the final blow. Horus makes his grand entrance, surfing a sand wave right over their heads. He unleashes a sand spear attack because of course he can do that now. Giant spikes of sand erupt from the ground, absolutely wrecking the goblin front line. Even the camel is stunned, looking up like, where did this kid come from? Landing perfectly, Horus is just glad he managed to make it in time. The surviving goblins are now trapped, sinking into the very ground they stand on. But the rest of them just get angrier, turning their attention to the new guy. Horace just glares back, completely unimpressed by these low-level desert pests. Horace channels his sand magic, ready to show these pests what useless really looks like. A swirling sandstorm kicks up, a full-blown tornado of grit and fury. These goblins are completely helpless as the vortex tears through their ranks, creating total chaos. And he is not done, unleashing a different kind of sand magic with a flick of his wrist. This time it is a sand ring, a razor-sharp disc of spinning grit he hurls at them. It carves right through the remaining goblins, cleaning house in one brutal pass. With the coast clear, Horace rushes over to check on the unconscious traveler. He kneels down to check on them, getting a grateful nudge from the very relieved camel. Apologizing quietly, he gently lifts the hood to check on the traveler's condition, and underneath is a surprisingly beautiful young woman, peacefully unconscious despite the chaos. Our boy is just a little bit stunned, thinking to himself how pretty she is. A second later, he snaps out of it, realizing this is hardly the time to be gawking. Deciding to help, he gently lifts her into his arms, telling the camel they need to go. To speed things up, he summons a sand wave to carry them, reassuring the freaked-out camel, and the camel's mind is officially blown when they pull up to his 5-star sand palace. Inside, he carefully places her on the sand bed he made, making sure she is comfortable. But he quickly realizes she will not recover without proper nutrition, something easy to eat. He tells the camel to hang tight for a second, a new plan already forming. Kneeling in the desert, Horace reactivates his sand sense, expanding his search for resources. Straining hard, he pushes his senses to their absolute limit, desperate to find something, anything. His sand sense locks onto something new, a whole bunch of life signs out in the wastes. With no other leads, our boy decides to head out and see what is causing the commotion. He arrives to find a full-blown turf war between these gnarly-looking black ants, and their opponents are these weird, translucent-looking ants who seem to be losing badly. So Horace just casually drops a sand geyser between them because why not get involved in insect politics? This black ants get absolutely blasted, completely unprepared for a kid with god-tier landscaping skills. But at least one of them is still looking for a fight, clearly not getting the memo. It is a massive brawl with giant spiky ants just tearing into the other colony. Horace just watches, realizing he has stumbled into some kind of ant civil war. Then the translucent ants all turn to him, basically asking for help, looking totally desperate. They are all chittering at him, and it is pretty clear they see him as their savior. One of them offers up its giant, glowing abdomen, and Horace is like, "For me, really?" He takes a closer look, realizing it is a sack filled with some kind of liquid. A quick sniff reveals it is not just any liquid, it is super sweet, it is honeydew. Grabbing his prize, he thanks the ants and makes a run for it, leaving them to their war. He races back to his magnificent sandcastle, mission officially a success. Back inside, he gently feeds the honeydew to the unconscious woman, one spoonful at a time, and she actually swallows it, a sign that she might just pull through after all. Horace sits by her bed, promising her that he is going to save her no matter what. His kingdom of sand stands tall, a silent testament to the power they all called useless. This woman finally wakes up, a little confused to find herself leaning on her rescuer. Looking up at him, she asks if he is okay, and our boy is just internally screaming, "Pretty girl." She thanks him profusely for the rescue, insisting on repaying him for his kindness. But then she gets this hesitant look, admitting she has a rather shameless favor to ask. Gathering her courage, she begins to ask for something absolutely huge, and she just comes right out and asks if she can please stay here with him. Horace is completely blindsided by the request, not sure how to even react. I mean, she wants to stay in his giant, empty sand palace in the middle of nowhere. Her expression is just pure desperation, practically begging him not to refuse, so he gets serious, asking what she is willing to do in return, anything at all, which immediately makes him recoil, realizing how incredibly creepy that sounded out loud. He quickly backpedals, suggesting they just talk things over first, like normal people. So they chill outside under a sand palm tree he made. Even the camel looks relaxed. She finally introduces herself as Isis, and her very expressive camel is named Raku. Once again, she thanks him for everything, and he just brushes it off. Then he introduces himself with a smile. He is Horace, the local sand wizard. Back inside, he finally asks the big question: why was she out in the desert alone? Isis's face falls as she admits she cannot give details, only that she was exiled from her country. At that, Horace just stares, realizing they have something major in common. He was exiled too. She is stunned by the revelation, and he admits he was also totally lost at first. Horace just smirks, explaining his useless sand magic is actually perfect out here. Isis is stunned, admitting that a sand attribute is almost unheard of. Her mind is just completely blown by the implications of his power. Looking around the massive, empty palace, she is still trying to wrap her head around it. So he gives her the grand tour of his sand-made fortress because why not? She is in total awe, realizing every intricate pillar and doorway is pure sand. The sheer scale of what he has accomplished is finally dawning on her, and she has to ask the obvious question: did he really build all this alone? She then puts it all together, guessing he was exiled because his magic was deemed useless. At the thought of it, she clenches her jaw, absolutely furious on his behalf. Suddenly, she just explodes, yelling about how incredibly unfair that is. To kick someone out for having sand magic when they can do this is just cruel, she declares. A fiery new determination burns in her eyes, a plan clearly forming. Then she grabs his hands, catching our boy completely off guard. With total conviction, she proposes they build the greatest kingdom ever right here together. Her expression is dead serious. This is a full-on partnership proposal. Horace is just stunned, the word together echoing in his brain. He immediately gets flustered, trying to clarify that together has no special meaning, which of course just makes her a blushing, stammering mess in return. Our boy just smirks, enjoying the absolute chaos he just accidentally created. Isis considers his grand proposal for about half a second, before Horace extends a hand, suggesting they team up as fellow exiles. She just stares, probably wondering if this is all a very weird dream, and then they shake on it. The kingdom-building business is officially a go. With the deal sealed, Horace immediately starts dragging her off on their first mission, which of course involves summoning another one of his signature sand waves, and Isis is absolutely not prepared for high-speed desert surfing, judging by the scream. Even Raku the camel is along for the ride, looking way too pleased with himself. Our boy just calmly explains this is his sand wave, the fastest way to travel. A few moments later, he brings them to a stop near some palm trees, revealing a full-blown oasis he found because of course he found one. He explains his sand sense lets him map the area using vibrations, much to Isis's amazement. Then he just casually yoinks a coconut right off a tree with a flick of his wrist, and after grabbing it, he is already planning their next supply run. Next on the list is hunting for meat and pelts because survival waits for no one, so with their first batch of resources, they head back to the palace. His useless magic has provided them with food, pelts, and fruit in no time at all. Horace then shows off how he can preserve food and transport goods, basically a walking utility belt. Back outside, he has even started building a moat, or maybe just a big puddle. He admits it is not much of an oasis yet, but it is a start for their new home. Horace figures they will just have to wait, but Isis suddenly gets a brilliant idea. She kneels by the water's edge, telling a very confused Horace to just leave it to her. Turns out she is a life mage, casting a growth promotion spell with a flourish. A tiny sprout immediately pops out of the sand, which is a cute, if underwhelming, start, and then it just explodes into a full-sized palm tree in about 2 seconds flat. This trunk thickens instantly, becoming a solid, very real tree right before his eyes. Isis looks up at her handiwork, soaking in the sun like she personally owns it. With the tree fully grown, she easily reaches up to grab some fresh coconuts. Our boy is just completely floored, realizing her magic is just as bonkers as his. She proudly presents their new and improved oasis, looking extremely pleased with herself. Turning to Horace with a huge smile, she declares their little project a complete success. He gets so hyped he grabs her hands, yelling about how amazing she is, zero chill whatsoever. Then he immediately freezes, trying to play it off as just a high five, you smooth operator. After all that work, a sweaty Isis asks if she can maybe take a dip in their new pool. Horace agrees, deciding he could use a wash too, and says he will wait for her back inside. Once he is gone, she peeks out from behind the tree, making sure the coast is clear. She lets out a little sigh of relief, finally getting a moment to herself after all the chaos. Thinking back on his sudden outburst, she decides it was weird but probably harmless enough. She starts getting ready to bathe, determined not to smell bad for the guy who saved her life. So she asks Raku for a second opinion, and the camel looks like he'd rather not answer. Raku the camel, meanwhile, is giving a look that is just a little too smug for comfort. He even asks her which of his faces she prefers because of course he does. Ignoring her camel's weirdness, Isis dips a hand into their new oasis to test the water. She sinks in with a sigh, commenting on how amazing the cool water feels. Finding a spot to relax, she gets comfortable near a strategically placed cactus. It is a moment of pure bliss, just enjoying a well-deserved bath in their new home. While soaking, she asks Raku what would be a good way to repay Horace for everything. And of course, our boy is hiding behind a pillar, shamelessly listening in on the whole thing. His ears are practically on high alert, catching every single word of her private musings. Isis continues to wonder aloud, determined to find a huge way to thank him for saving her. This sends Horace into a complete meltdown, trying to purge his mind of impure thoughts. His brain just short-circuits with the sudden, overwhelming thought, pretty girl bathing. His little freakout startles Isis, who turns to see him having a full-blown crisis. But she is not mad, just confused, pointing out that one of the honeydew ants has arrived. She holds up the little translucent ant, which seems to have tracked them all the way here. Then the reality of the situation finally hits her, and she gets incredibly flustered. Horace frantically covers his eyes, swearing he was looking at the ants, not her, totally not her. A wide shot shows their peaceful oasis, a brief moment of calm after that storm of awkwardness. Now fully dressed, she explains the ants just showed up while she was bathing, looking mortified. They sit down with the little ant, which is chittering at them, clearly trying to say something. This little ant messenger is chittering away, having a full-on conversation with another ant. Our boy just looks down, admitting he has absolutely no clue what the ant is trying to say. From behind him, Isis guesses that maybe the little guy wants them to follow it somewhere. He asks the ant if that is the plan, and the little thing actually nods in confirmation. With a serious look, Horace decides that if they are going to live here, they might as well go. And with that settled, the tiny ant leads them out into the vast, empty desert. Their destination is a massive anthill, which Horace notes looks like a full-on fortress. Isis stares into the pitch-black entrance, probably wondering what fresh hell they are walking into. Venturing inside, they find themselves in a massive cavern with weird spiral things on the ceiling. Horace is shocked this huge complex was outside his sand sense range, while Isis marvels at all the rooms. Then they spot an ant with a badly injured leg, which seems to be the whole problem. Turns out the injured party is a giant ant, and Horus immediately asks what happened. A light bulb goes off over his head. He knows exactly what to do here. Looking around the massive chamber, he comments that it is basically a great hall. This ant on his head starts pointing with its antenna, leaving our boy completely confused. They are led to a throne where a humanoid ant figure thanks them for their trouble. This figure introduces herself as the ruler of this place, the Honeydew Ant Queen. She tells them to be at ease, which is a pretty big ask at the moment. Both Horus and Isis are just completely frozen, staring at the talking ant queen in disbelief. Horus finally blurts out that the ant just talked before awkwardly introducing himself and Isis. This ant queen graciously accepts their introduction, thanking them for answering her summons. She then formally asks if they would be willing to accept her humble request for aid. Horus immediately agrees, saying that in this endless desert, everyone has to help each other. So she lays out the mission. She needs an escort to meet the Iron Ant King. Her request is simple. She needs Horus to use his power to drive the Iron Ants back. Both of them are just a little stunned, realizing they have been asked to join an ant war. But Horus quickly sees the upside, realizing the ants could be an amazing source of intel. He proposes a formal alliance, his combat skills for their information network and resources. This queen is overjoyed by the offer and gratefully accepts his terms. With the deal sealed, our boy decides they are heading out immediately, no time to waste. And just like that, they are back on the sand wave with a very surprised ant queen in tow. Both Isis and the queen are completely floored by the sheer power of his sand magic. Horus just shrugs it off, saying this is a mutually beneficial partnership after all. Suddenly, the little ant on his head points forward, having spotted their destination. They arrive at a massive jagged fortress that looks like it is carved from solid rock. At the entrance, some heavily armored iron ants immediately spot their approach. This guards start panicking, clearly not prepared for an attack via sand tsunami. Horus, ever so casual, says he will just knock them out for a bit, no big deal. A massive magic circle flares to life as he prepares to make his grand entrance, and he unleashes his great sand wave, ready to wash away the entire welcoming committee. This sand wave crashes down, a literal tsunami about to swallow the fortress entrance. With the entrance cleared, Horus, Isis, and the queen make their grand sandy landing. Our boy looks on, ready to get this negotiation started one way or another. This iron ant guards are completely buried, neutralized without a single casualty. He explains his sand just rendered them immobile, shielding Isis from the giant bugs. Then he just casually steps on one's head to make a point, problem handled. Taking a moment, he seems to be admiring the fortress's unique, jagged architecture. Inside, the queen explains the entire fortress is actually constructed from iron sand. She elaborates that they build their homes in this iron-rich soil, which is a huge reveal. A light bulb goes off for Horus. If he can control iron sand, that is a serious power-up. So he reaches out, touching the wall to see if his magic works on this new material. Both Isis and the queen watch in surprise as the wall immediately begins to react. This cavern walls start to ripple like a living thing, much to Isis's absolute amazement. Horus smirks, realizing he can now easily restrain any other guards they might run into. And just like that, the remaining ants are swallowed by the ground, completely helpless. This leaves them a clear, if slightly intimidating, path straight to the throne room. Walking through the massive hall, Isis cannot help but comment on the sheer scale of the place. At the end of the hall, the Iron Ant King notes the queen's arrival with human escorts. And there he is, the Iron Ant King himself, looking every bit the intimidating bug monarch. This honeydew queen steps forward to parley, but the king seems less than thrilled to chat. This Iron Ant King immediately shuts her down, saying her request is completely unnecessary. Our honeydew queen is stunned, asking why they cannot just talk things out like civilized bugs. But the king is done chatting, declaring from his throne that they are all about to die. Horus and Isis just stare, trying to process the incredibly casual death sentence they just received. This four-armed monarch stands revealed, looking like he has never heard the word diplomacy in his life. His only message is death, a single word that pretty much ends the conversation right there. And with that, he leaps from his throne, spear aimed, ready to personally deliver on that promise. Horus instantly shoves the queen back, yelling at her to stay put while he handles this. Reaching out, he unleashes his newfound iron sand powers to intercept the charging king. This attack is stopped cold as sand whips around the king, binding him completely in midair. As the dust settles, the queen explains that this violent rage is not the king's true nature. So our boy focuses his sand sense, trying to get a read on what is really going on. His magic quickly detects a second life form, something latched right onto the king's head. Isis immediately puts it together. It is a parasitic monster, and asks if her life magic can help. Horus tells her to stand by. He will deal with the parasite while she prepares to heal the king. This plan requires extreme precision, restraining the king without accidentally killing the parasite on him. To get the job done, he summons a massive golem straight from the iron sand floor. Meanwhile, the Iron Ant King is already straining against the sand bindings, trying to break free. Horus orders his new golem to grab the king and hold him down, no matter what it takes. This king just glares, completely unimpressed by the giant rock monster trying to wrestle him, but the king just shatters the golem's arm like it is made of glass, sending debris flying. Both Isis and the queen are completely stunned by his raw, unrestrained power. Horus, however, is totally unfazed, declaring that if one breaks, he will just make another. and he immediately follows through, summoning an even bigger golem to restrain the monarch. This king seems genuinely shocked that his opponent has a make more minions button. As the new golem grabs the king from behind, Horus rushes in to get up close and personal. He tells his sand buddy to hold the king still for the delicate operation he is about to perform. This requires some serious focus. One wrong move and he could seriously injure the king. His sand tendrils carefully latch onto the parasite, beginning the world's most stressful extraction. With a final decisive yank, he successfully rips the little mind controller off the king's head. Horus holds the squirming parasite, explaining that while it is not personal, it has to go. Then he just casually pops it out of existence. Problem solved, no more mind control. He immediately turns to Isis, asking for a status report on their royal patient. She confirms the king is safe, though healing him took a lot out of her magic reserves. This honeydew queen is bowing so low she might hit the floor, thanking Horus profusely. Our boy just plays it cool, saying it was all just part of their business arrangement. Just then, the Iron Ant King begins to stir, finally coming back to his senses. This queen rushes to his side, relieved that he is finally waking up from his violent nap. Isis is right there too, and the first thing the newly conscious king sees is a human face. His first words are to accuse them of being invaders, so much for a thank you. This Iron Ant King is just blinking, completely lost and asking what in the world just happened. So the Honeydew Queen starts explaining the whole "you were possessed by a parasite" situation. Hearing this, the king slams his fists down, absolutely mortified that he fell prey to a monster. He then bows deeply to Horus and Isis, thanking them for saving his sorry, mind-controlled butt. While they discuss rewards, the king insists on repaying the debt personally, but Horus waves it off. Our boy just raises a hand, cutting them off with a hold that thought, "I have a better idea," and with a flick of his wrist, he summons a literal palace, suggesting they chat at his place. Both ant monarchs are completely floored. Horus is not just some guy, he is the ruler of a whole kingdom. Isis is just fangirling over the decor, while Horus looks a little embarrassed by all the praise. Inside the grand hall, a polite cough gets the official meeting started. Horus sits them all down at a massive table, ready to lay out his proposal. But the king addresses him as King Horus, which clearly throws our boy for a loop. He gets all flustered, saying it is super awkward to talk to them without proper names. So he asks what to call them, and they both just admit they do not actually have any. Horus finds it weird they just go by their titles, feeling it is way too impersonal for allies. They give him their names in ant speak, but the queen seems to have another idea brewing. She looks right at Horus, about to make a very specific and very personal request, and then she asks if he would be so kind as to give them both names himself. He suggests Ain for the king and Mel for the queen, which he thinks fit them perfectly. They absolutely love it, with Ain declaring he will treasure the name for life. A new alliance is born, and just as the names are settled, a bright flash of light completely engulfs the two monarchs. Their insectoid forms start to melt away, reforming into something decidedly more human, revealing Ain and Mel in their new, very human-looking forms, and wow, okay, they are hot. Mel in particular looks up, completely transformed and looking rather pleased with the results. Meanwhile, Horus and Isis are just processing, their brains having apparently left the building. Then the processing finishes and they both just absolutely lose their minds, screaming in unison. This newly named monarchs are totally calm about it, with Mel just happy it all worked out. Turning to Horus, Mel addresses him as her king, about to drop another bombshell. She declares that both of their nations will now serve him as his loyal vassals, much to his shock. This offer is so unexpected that our boy does a full-on anime-grade spit take. Ignoring the chaos, Mel just comments on how weird it is to be in a human body. Horus tries to pump the brakes, saying he has questions, but priority one is getting Mel some clothes. Isis immediately cuts in, pointing out they first need to deal with his classic pervert-coded nosebleed. He gets super flustered, apologizing for human culture and offering up some of his own clothes. She comes back wearing what is generously described as a toga, asking if this works. Isis, the only adult in the room, immediately slaps a hand over his eyes, problem solved. Taking matters into his own hands, Horus just decides to make her a proper robe out of sand. Ain then explains that this whole transformation was according to legend, which of course piques Horus's interest. He clarifies that when a monster gets a name from a human, it is a binding contract, though even he did not expect the full-on humanification. Regardless, Ain is all in, passionately pledging his entire being to serve his new master. Ain tells Horus to just sit back and watch, he will handle the logistics of their new alliance. And by logistics, he apparently means teleporting the entire ant fortress right next to Horus's palace. Horus is completely blindsided, asking when the heck that happened, while Ain just smirks smugly. Meanwhile, Mel is outside trying to explain her new, less buggy appearance to her confused subjects. She has already figured out how to weave leaves into a makeshift cloak, a queen of all trades. Just then, Horus hears Isis calling his name from way down below the palace walls. She is looking up, asking for a little help with their new, very sandy kingdom situation. So the two of them take a walk to survey their domain, which is currently just a giant sandbox. Isis points out the obvious problem, they need to figure out how to turn all this sand into farmland. But Horus explains the soil is way too porous, meaning they cannot grow anything substantial here. She looks genuinely worried, realizing they cannot sustain a kingdom without fertile land. Our boy just smiles, saying they will just have to go find what they need, time for a fetch quest. Her face absolutely lights up, completely on board with their next big adventure. Right on cue, a massive, majestic lion beast shows up to crash the party, but Aang steps forward, telling everyone to just leave this one to him. He declares he will show them the new power that came with his human form. It is Flex O'Clock. As Aang faces down the flaming monster, Horus asks if he is sure, getting a duh of course in response. This new king smirks, adding that he has got his trusty treasure spear to even the odds. He proves his point by literally holding the beast's massive jaws open with the spear shaft. Then with a single powerful thrust, he unleashes a blast of energy to end the fight. This spear's energy blast rips straight through the monster's skull, ending the fight decisively. Aang just scoffs, declaring the beast was way too weak to even be a warm-up. His attack connects in a massive flash, completely overwhelming the fiery lion in a single blow, and the monster just dissolves into smoke and embers, totally annihilated on the spot. With the threat gone, he stands over the dissipating remains, looking every bit the confident new vassal. He even surprises himself, admitting he is way stronger than he ever expected to be. Horus runs over, absolutely hyping him up for the cool finish, which Aang humbly accepts. When asked about the technique, Aang explains he just channeled raw magic through his spear. Our boy is stunned he took it down with just an enchanted poke, but Aang gives Horus all the credit. Meanwhile, Mel notices a couple of scavenger birds circling overhead looking for a snack. She decides she is not having it, announcing she will scare them off before they get any ideas. Raising a hand, she unleashes a brilliant flash of light magic straight into the sky. This new power zaps the birds away, leaving nothing but a few stray feathers behind. Horus is surprised, asking if she just used light magic, which is apparently a big deal. She confirms with a huge smile, saying she evolved the ability after he gave her a name. Mel then puffs out her chest, offering her rare and valuable power to him anytime he needs it. Of course, this triggers another classic nosebleed for Horus, and Isis is just so done with him. She sighs, thinking to herself that her master's other qualities are a little questionable. For a moment, she seems a little lost in thought, maybe worried about their future. But then she spots something in the distance, pointing it out to Horus and the others. In the distance, Isis spots a whole field of wild sorghum growing in the sand. She explains it is a super rare and nutritious grain, a total jackpot for them. So the whole crew starts harvesting, with Aang going absolutely feral in the background. Horus is just impressed, noting how lucky they are to have a plant expert with them. Beaming with pride, she tells him to just leave all the botany to her. Back at their newly summoned palace, it is time to get to work on their farming project. Isis lays out the plan to grow anything they first need to make their own compost. Our boy is all for it, thanking her for taking the lead on this whole agriculture thing. Just then, Aang and Mel's loyal subjects arrive with armloads of organic material. They get to mixing, throwing leaves, sorghum scraps, and sand into a box. Then Isis works her magic, adding special ant nectar to speed up the fermentation. It is a whole process involving multiple stages of mixing and extracting liquids. And boom, the result is a handful of rich, dark soil, much to everyone's amazement. With the soil ready, she turns to Horus, asking him to handle the large-scale production. He steps up, using his sand magic to mold the compost into long, solid bars. These bars are then laid out in perfect rows, creating the foundation for their new fields. He looks to her for approval, and she gives him a simple, happy confirmation. Kneeling down, Isis explains this is just the start to improving the entire area's soil. Aang is blown away by the progress, while Horus humbly gives credit to the whole team. And there it is, their desert fortress now has the beginnings of a real, sustainable farm. Horus gives a heartfelt thanks to everyone for their hard work. While Isis is impressed, Aang is already scheming about their next big project. He points out that their amazing new castle is missing one crucial thing, a watchtower. Aang explains it'd give them a perfect vantage point over the entire desert landscape. Horus agrees it is a good idea, though Aang's promise to protect him is a little intense. So our boy just decides to whip one up, activating a massive sand magic circle. Sand immediately begins to swirl and rise from the ground at his command. And just like that, a ridiculously huge and ornate tower shoots up into the sky. This whole crew is absolutely floored, so Horus suggests they check out the new view. From the top, he and Isis look out over their vast, sandy kingdom. He comments on how beautiful it is, and she quietly agrees with him. Isis seems genuinely at peace, just taking in the view with a serene smile, which of course leaves Horus completely mesmerized for a second there. Meanwhile, Aang is messing with some weird pig thing, much to Mel's concern. Horus just soaks it all in, feeling a real sense of belonging with his new crew. He even tells Mel not to worry because what could possibly go wrong up here. Right on cue, a giant bird swoops down and snatches the pig creature away. This sends Horus and Isis into a full-blown, synchronized panic attack. Without a second thought, his hand slams down on the railing, ready to jump, and he just launches himself off the tower, yelling that he will handle it. Horus immediately summons a wave of sand, basically surfing his way down from the tower. He's got a look of pure focus, totally locked in on the rescue mission. Closing the distance fast, he gets right underneath the giant bird napper. Then he shoots a massive pillar of sand straight up to intercept it. This bird is completely blindsided, not expecting an attack from below. Our boy is not playing around, forming a magic circle right on his fist, and he just decks the monster with a sand-powered uppercut to the beak. That one solid hit is enough to make the bird release its precious cargo. This little pig thing celebrates its freedom, completely forgetting about the laws of gravity, which immediately comes back to bite it as it realizes it is now plummeting. It just free falls through the sky, screaming its little pig head off. So Horus whips out a sand tendril to play a quick game of catch. He snags the creature just in time, telling it to hang on tight. Then he pulls them both into a protective sand sphere for a safe-ish landing. This sphere hits the ground with a soft thud, absorbing all the impact. It gently dissipates, leaving them to bounce a couple of times on the sand. They land in a messy but totally unharmed pile on the desert floor. Our boy is just relieved it is all over, having pulled off the daring rescue. But as he is lying there, he notices something glittering all around him. Turns out they landed in a massive deposit of gold dust, absolute jackpot. Horus is a little confused by his sparkly new landing zone. And right there in the middle of the gold field is a structure. It is a staircase leading underground, making him wonder if it is a dungeon entrance. He realizes his sand magic works on this gold dust too, a very profitable upgrade, so he uses his sand sense to scout ahead, sending a golden stream down the steps. With his trusty camel thing in tow, he decides it is probably safe enough to explore. But first, he whips up a sand golem to act as their disposable point man. This golem leads them through a massive, ancient-looking corridor. Our boy is surprised, admitting he was expecting a simple cave, not a whole building. Looking around, he is already thinking about using all this gold to redecorate his castle. Then he gets serious, wondering if this place is a real monster-filled labyrinth. Suddenly, his senses pick up on something, making him look up in alarm. He spots a light at the end of the hall and decides to check it out. They cautiously approach the archway, peering into the bright space beyond, and it opens up into a ridiculously opulent hall filled with golden statues and treasures. Horus and his camel are just floored by the sheer scale and shininess of it all. He scans the area, noting there is no sign of any monsters anywhere. This has him thinking it is less of a dungeon and more like a palace. But the place is totally empty of people, just these giant, weird statues. Then one of the statues speaks, clarifying that it is in fact not a statue. This statue introduces itself as a sphinx, a divine beast which is definitely not on the welcome brochure. Our boy is understandably a little freaked out by this development. He yells that the statue just talked, and the sphinx clarifies again that it is not a statue. Horus immediately starts apologizing for trespassing, clearly not wanting to get on its bad side. This sphinx seems amused, noting that most humans are just blinded by all the gold. Trying to de-escalate, Horus waves goodbye, saying they will just see themselves out now. But the sphinx is not letting him go, offering him a comfortable life here, which sounds a lot like a prison sentence. He tries to explain that his friends are waiting outside, so he really has to leave. This sphinx basically tells him that since he waltzed in uninvited, he does not get to leave uninvited either. Defeated, Horus agrees to listen, realizing he is completely at the creature's mercy. So the sphinx proposes a little game instead of just ending him on the spot, for funsies. Right on cue, a massive golden spike starts dropping from the ceiling, no pressure. This rules are simple: answer a riddle with no right answer before he gets impaled. Horus weighs his non-existent options and agrees to the challenge because what other choice does he have? With that settled, the Sphinx officially begins its deadly little pop quiz. This riddle describes a being that is both cruel and loving, greedy and self-sacrificing, a total paradox. It tells him to take his time thinking, helpfully pointing out the key word is human. Putting it all together, Horus asks if the answer is, in fact, human. This Sphinx just gives a little smirk, clearly intrigued by his quick response. And then it just erupts into laughter, totally entertained by this whole situation. This Sphinx is like, correct, asking if Horus really thought he got it wrong. It explains the only reason it laughed was because he answered so damn fast. Now genuinely curious, the creature leans in, demanding to know how he solved it. Horus just says the riddle was not that hard, it was just describing the core of what humans are. Which is wild because the Sphinx reveals that every other human who has stumbled in here has failed the test. Our boy thinks for a moment, explaining the riddle itself was not the real problem. He figures it is because their pride and status would not let them admit to the ugly parts of humanity. His reflection on the polished floor proves his point. They were all blinded by greed and self-importance. Impressed, the Sphinx tells him he is free to go, even offering a thank you for the chat. But as Horus turns to leave, the golden statue starts to glow and crack apart. This entire thing just shatters in a blinding flash of light. Horus throws up a hand, shielding his eyes from the intense blast. When the light clears, the first thing we see is a close-up of a very human-looking chest, and standing there is the Sphinx, now in the form of a stunning woman checking out her new bod. Our boy is just completely frozen, his brain clearly buffering from this plot twist. He stammers out her name, and she casually confirms she is, in fact, the Sphinx. She explains that for a divine beast, taking on a human form is basically nothing. Leaning back, she decides she actually kind of likes this new body. She then gets uncomfortably close, commenting on how human males are supposed to like larger assets. This leaves Horus completely red-faced and flustered, stammering as she gets right in his personal space. This Sphinx seems genuinely confused about why he is so flustered by her new form. Then Horus remembers she mentioned a special prize for solving the riddle. With a smug grin, she reveals that the grand prize is in fact herself. Her deal is simple: to leave this place, he has to take her with him. Our boy just stares, his brain still trying to catch up to this new reality. Trying to backpedal, he insists he is fine with a divine beast offering to be his subordinate. He explains that since he can control all this gold, he does not really need anything else. But she just points out the exit is now permanently sealed, sending him into a fresh panic. She tells him to relax, promising to solve any little problems that might pop up. And by solve, she apparently means giving him a suffocating hug. The camel is not impressed. Blushing like crazy, Horus begs for some personal space, citing the desert heat. Looking a little disappointed, she actually agrees to back off for now. Now outside, she asks him to give her a proper name instead of just Sphinx. After a moment's thought, he suggests Phi, and she immediately brightens up. A small, satisfied smile plays on her lips. She clearly likes the name, which is immediately followed by her bursting into laughter, scaring the hell out of Horus. He jumps back, completely bewildered and asking what is so funny all of a sudden. She just says she thought his flustered reaction was cute, which does not help at all. Formally accepting her new name, she pledges her loyalty to him as her master. He agrees they can drop the honorifics, so she is just Phi from now on. So back at the castle, it is time for the grand introduction. One of his companions is just staring at the gold he brought back, completely unimpressed. Horus tells Phi it is time to introduce herself to the rest of the crew. This blonde girl is immediately suspicious, wondering why Horus just happened to find this woman in the desert. With a grand flourish, Phi announces she is the Sphinx, now sworn to serve her new master. His entire welcoming committee just short-circuits, trying to process that little bombshell, which is followed by a collective synchronized scream because he brought home a divine beast asterisk. While they are all losing their minds, Horus tries to de-escalate by offering to find Phi a room. Phi immediately suggests they just share a room, which sends Horus into a panic. This blonde girl stammers that a subordinate should be near their master, but maybe not that near. Meanwhile, the other girl is just trembling in fear, muttering the name Isis. Through a very strained smile, the blonde girl tries to explain that co-ed living arrangements are maybe not conscientious. His other friend jumps in, trying to argue that Horus deserves at least a little privacy. Realizing this is a losing battle, the blonde girl just grabs Horus to make a strategic retreat. But Phi just sits down, clarifying that listening to her master was not part of the deal. He gets it right. This blonde girl immediately brightens up, agreeing with a very enthusiastic of course. So Phi asks which room she can take, and the blonde girl happily points to the one right next to his. Then she clings to the other guy, tearfully revealing that the room she just offered is actually her asterisk room. Unfazed, Phi just points to the room on the other asterisk side of his, asking if that one's available, and so begins an intense stare-down, a silent declaration of war between the two of them. Horus, completely missing the death glares, is just happy everyone seems to be getting along. Later that night, the castle is quiet under the vast desert moon. Inside his room, Horus just collapses onto his bed, totally wiped out from the day's drama. Lying there, he reflects on how exhausting it is to build a tower and recruit a divine beast. His thoughts then shift to tomorrow's agenda, maybe expanding his search for supplies. This next morning dawns bright and early over his desert fortress. But something's off. His bedroom door is creaking open, a shadow falling inside. And a very familiar, very uninvited guest is climbing right into his bed with him. Waking up, he feels a weight settle on him and wonders what the hell is going on. And it is Phi giving him a gentle good morning from a very not gentle position. He is instantly red-faced and panicking while she just calmly notes that he is awake. At that exact moment, the blonde girl throws the door open, calling his name in a panic. She immediately demands to know what Phi is doing, who just dismisses her as a little girl. With a totally convincing yawn, Phi explains she just got sleepy and wandered into the wrong room, an honest mistake, obviously. This blonde girl is not buying this for a single second, her face a mask of pure rage, which results in a castle-shaking scream of Phi's name that probably scared the camels. Later at an oasis, Phi explains that as his subordinate, she has a very important job watching over him. This watching apparently includes his private life, day and night, a very dedicated employee. Trying a new tactic, the blonde girl asks if this service includes helping with chores for Horus. Without a second of hesitation, Phi rises from the water, agreeing to the terms and leaving the other two speechless. Back at the oasis, the blonde girl looks up with a flicker of concern. She tries to convince herself that Horus will be fine out there, no need to worry. Meanwhile, a massive explosion rips through the desert, so much for not worrying. Something is tearing through the dunes at an impossible speed, heading right for our guys. Horus and his armored companion brace themselves, realizing they have stumbled into a real fight. As a blur of motion closes in, Horus throws up a hand, casting a defensive spell. He summons a massive wall of iron sand, hoping to block the incoming attack. But the creature smashes right into it, the entire barrier cracking under the sheer force. His defense completely shatters, sending Horus flying back from the brutal impact. Landing on his feet, he cannot believe how close that call actually was. Before he can even recover, another attack is already rushing toward him. A giant sand beast erupts from the ground, forcing Horus to ride a sand wave to escape. Our boy is screaming that this monster is way too strong for a random desert encounter. His knight buddy agrees this is definitely not what was on the agenda for today. Wasting no time, the knight leaps forward, spear ready to take the beast head-on. Apparently this is a sand turtle mole that has been powering up by eating other local monsters. This creature lets out a furious roar, its crystalline shell beginning to glow ominously. Both of them start panicking as the light intensifies, knowing his sand wall will not be enough, and the monster unleashes a concentrated beam of pure energy right at them. At that exact moment, a pair of boots skids to a halt, arriving just in time for the party. And just in the nick of time, someone else slams onto the scene with a heavy thud. Horus and his buddy are screaming their heads off, pretty sure they are about to be vaporized. But a new voice cuts through the chaos as a blonde, mage-looking guy appears out of nowhere. He has thrown up a massive crystal shield, blocking the death beam at the last possible second. With a grin, he explains his quartz crystal just deflected the attack, much to everyone's shock. His big idea was to reinforce the sand wall with iron and then slap a quartz coating on it. This creates a massive makeshift mirror, complete with a fancy magic circle for good measure. And now he is gonna give that monster a taste of its own medicine by reflecting the beam. This energy blast ricochets off the shield, heading straight back to sender. It slams right into the sand turtle mole, which was definitely not expecting that. This creature just writhes in agony, getting absolutely wrecked by its own power. And with one last gurgle, the giant beast collapses into the sand, totally defeated. Our mysterious new hero just looks on, all jobs done. He casually confirms that was, in fact, the sand turtle mole they were fighting. Back at the castle, the girls are just staring at the massive corpse, impressed by the sheer size of it. This knight is practically vibrating with excitement, telling Horus this shiny shell is no ordinary rock. Our new mage friend explains the shell is made of quartz, the raw material for making glass. This gets a synchronized glass from Phi and the blonde girl, who are clearly connecting the dots. This mage smiles, declaring that with this he can finally make windows and complete the castle. So everyone gets their assignments, building a furnace, sorting materials, and even preparing snacks, a proper team project. So they have built this massive, industrial-looking furnace right onto the side of the castle. This mage gives the signal, telling Phi it is her turn to bring the heat. Horus, ever the warrior, is just hoping this whole thing does not blow up in their faces. And Phi just unleashes a concentrated blast of pure energy right into the furnace's mouth. This new mage is screaming his head off about the heat. Yeah, we noticed, genius. But Horus is just relieved, seeing their absolutely insane plan is actually working. A perfect stream of molten glass pours out into the mold, a total success. With the prototype done, they decide to go into full-on mass production mode. Later, Horus is admiring their handiwork, tapping on a freshly installed window pane. This whole castle is now decked out with proper windows, looking way more like a drafty ruin. Beaming with pride, he turns and gives a heartfelt thank you to the entire crew. This mage then reveals they did not just make windows, they made mirrors too, and by mirrors, he means a gigantic, wall-sized one right on the main staircase. Isis quietly notes how it makes her want to check her appearance. Suddenly, a new ant girl freaks out, telling Horus she's grown a massive lump on her chest. Phi calmly explains to the blonde girl Mel that having lumps there is perfectly normal actually. This knight chimes in that he does not have any, completely missing the point as usual. This whole anatomy lesson just short-circuits Horus's brain, leaving him and Isis stunned. He immediately starts panicking, frantically assuring Isis that he saw absolutely nothing. Nope. Then the knight asks if Isis does not have any either, and Horus just dies a little inside. Horus is just looking completely lost, asking if he is missing some crucial piece of information. Phi calmly explains that both she and Mel are in fact equipped in that particular department. This knight then cheerfully points out that Isis is not, earning a horrified stare from the new mage. This revelation sends the mage into a cold sweat, his brain short-circuiting at the news. For his brilliant contribution to the conversation, the knight's leg is suddenly grabbed in a death grip. And Isis calmly informs him there are other things he needs to learn about anatomy, starting with pain. She then mutters that she is not small, they are just huge, while the knight writhes in agony behind her. Horus's attention, however, is captured by a group of sunglasses-wearing camel things serving drinks, and he just cannot help but crack a small smile at the sheer absurdity of his life now. Looking at his whole crew in the mirror, he reflects on how it used to be just him out here. But now with this chaotic group, it is starting to feel like a family and every day is fun. His expression softens as he lets the word family really sink in for a moment, which leads him to wonder if someone named Morja is doing alright wherever she is. Elsewhere, a solitary figure is trekking across an endless expanse of sand dunes. This person is clearly exhausted, panting heavily from the unforgiving heat. Finally stopping, the traveler leans on a staff, looking completely spent from the journey. A cat-eared woman named Morja pulls back her hood, admitting this desert is way worse than she imagined. She then glares at her completely empty waterskin, realizing she was not prepared for the desert of death. Alone in the wastes, she wishes she'd forced her brothers to reveal Horus's location, though they never would have. To cope, she just uses some spatial magic, conjuring a single perfect flower out of thin air. Staring at the flower, Morja sadly whispers Horus's name to herself. She is convinced it is impossible to find her brother in a wasteland this huge, but then her expression hardens with a sudden burst of determination. She declares that she is not giving up and she is definitely not going back to that castle. With that, she continues her trek, vowing she will not return even if they beg her to. Her lonely journey is suddenly interrupted by a very out-of-place desert rabbit, and then another one appears. Apparently this place is not totally dead after all. This two little guys just hop on by, completely unbothered by her presence, which actually manages to bring a small, genuine smile to her face for a moment, and that peaceful vibe is immediately shattered by a giant frog monster erupting from the sand. She is completely shocked, realizing she just walked right into a random boss fight. This thing is just drooling, clearly sizing her up as its next meal. Its massive, unblinking eye stares her down with pure predatory focus, and in its reflection we see her standing her ground, ready for whatever comes next. This monster attacks, whipping its long, sticky tongue right at her at high speed. But Morja's way too quick for that, using her spatial magic to teleport out of the way. She reappears a safe distance away as its tongue just smacks the empty sand behind her. Looking back, she seems confused, like something is not quite right after that dodge. Her body suddenly feels hot and she realizes the monster's saliva must have been poisonous. And just like that, she collapses into the sand, the poison taking hold as her cloak starts to burn away. Back at the castle, the crew is settling in after their big glass-making project. Mel, while eating, puts two and two together and asks if his sister uses spatial magic. Horace just munches on a giant crab leg, admitting that life's been pretty fulfilling lately. He then complains that if he had that magic, he could have stored this giant crab they are using as a dinner table. Isis calmly agrees that having a pocket dimension would indeed be very convenient for groceries. This knight asks for a claw, but Fi points out that it is physically impossible for her to pass it. This whole conversation makes Mel realize she has never actually heard anything about Horace's family. Immediately, the knight and even Isis are super curious about what kind of sister he has. Horace admits he never really mentioned the whole being exiled part of his tragic backstory. It is not exactly a happy story, so he has been keeping it to himself this whole time. But he figures, alright, he will give them the short and not-so-sweet version of events. So he lays it all out: the exile, his four brothers, his sister Morja, and resisting the Empire. His past is clearly filled with a whole lot of repressed anger and frustration. This knight is absolutely furious for him, while Isis just sighs that humans are, as always, the worst. Mel notes that his sister was the only one who stood by him, which Fi finds strange. Horace explains his mother hated fighting, and he thinks he inherited that peaceful nature from her. He looks at his own hand, the source of all his power and his problems, and holding the flower she made, he quietly wonders if Morja is doing okay out there. Suddenly, a noise from above catches his attention. Some ant scouts are scaling the walls. This knight explains he sent them to patrol, while Horace just asks what these little guys are. This ant scout is chittering away, delivering an urgent report to the knight. He immediately translates for Horace, explaining they found a girl collapsed to the southwest. Horace's face hardens as he demands to know what she looks like, so the knight just holds up his little ant scout like a walkie-talkie to get the details. This description of blonde hair and jewel-like eyes makes Horace's blood run cold. He completely snaps, screaming that it must be Morja and they have to go now. This whole situation is giving him major flashbacks to what happened with Isis and the Goblin Sand. Luckily, an ant girl explains one of their soldiers is tracking the culprits with pheromones. Without a second thought, Horace is already at the window preparing for a grand exit. And by exit, I mean he summons a massive wave of sand to ride out on. This knight offers to guide them, while Horace is so hyped he has started speaking ant. Isis, ever the calm one, warns him not to get too reckless and charge ahead. She is clearly suspicious, thinking this whole story about the monsters does not add up. Grabbing him, she points out that Goblin Sand do not act this way, so he needs to be careful. He just says he knows, clutching a small, compressed ball of sand in his hand, which he then hurls into the air, unleashing a massive burst of his power, creating a gigantic sandbird to act as their own personal express flight across the desert. Our boy claims he is totally calm, while casually making giant sand monsters for a taxi. This rest of the crew is just staring, completely stunned he pulled that off without them even noticing. And Isis just sighs, admitting it was a pretty dumb question to ask if he was okay. So the sandbird drops them off in this rocky, desolate canyon. This knight confirms this is the spot where they found Morja, and their little ant scout guide is already waving them over, leading them deeper into the winding, rocky path. Horace is just trying to process everything that is happening when he spots a familiar-looking flower wilting on the ground. This knight's trying to be reassuring, saying the goblin sand are no match for him, but Horace is not listening. He picks up the flower, confirming it is the one he sent to Morja, which makes everyone realize his sister is definitely here and in trouble. His face hardens as he concludes she's been captured by the goblin sand. This ant scout confirms their pheromone trail leads right to the enemy's base, so it is time to go. And their base is, of course, a giant, terrifying monster skull carved into a cliffside. A couple of goblin guards are standing watch, looking as charming as ever. This crew peeks from behind a rock, confirming this is the goblin sand's main hideout. Horace thanks the little ant scout, who wishes it had the power to fight alongside them. Then out of nowhere, the knight drops into a full dramatic bow right in front of Horace, leaving our boy completely baffled by this sudden display of respect, which immediately inspires Mel and even Isis to demand some head pats for their hard work too. And Horace is just short-circuiting, wondering why everyone, including Isis, suddenly wants to be petted. Mel just steps right up, fully expecting her reward before the big rescue mission priorities. Mel steps forward with a confident smirk, announcing she will handle the opening move. Without wasting a second, she unleashes a blinding flash of light magic right at the guards. These two goblin lookouts are completely stunned, screeching as the light hits them dead on. They are totally disoriented, wondering what the hell just exploded in their faces. Of course, the commotion immediately draws a whole bunch of their buddies out of the cave. Isis just watches this unfold with a look that says amateurs, completely unbothered. Then, with a flick of her wrist, she prepares to make her own, much quieter entrance. She eats a giant boulder, completely blocking off the cave entrance, problem solved, Isis style. This leaves the goblins outside looking absolutely baffled, cut off from all their backup. And with a massive crash, the path is sealed, leaving just a cloud of dust behind. A couple of them try to break through with a club, which is just adorable, really. But it turns out there was a whole other goblin army waiting in the canyon anyway, so much for that plan. This knight is losing his mind, yelling that Phi's flashy entrance just called every monster to their location. Horus cuts through the noise with one simple command: wipe every single one of them out. He quickly delegates roles, sending the whole crew charging into the fray with a clear strategy. Our boy is already casting a huge spell as the battle erupts all around them. Meanwhile, a new girl with the party worries that she can only use support magic but wants to fight. Her resolve is immediately tested when a goblin lunges right at her with a sword. Looking back in terror, she is clearly not built for this kind of direct combat. Still, she grips her staff, ready to defend herself because what other choice is there? And she immediately proves she is not just support, clocking the goblin right in the jaw with her staff. After a surprisingly quick cleanup, the knight looks around and asks if that is the last of them. He then complains that the goblin numbers have exploded, throwing some serious blame at Phi for her flashy entrance. But Horus cuts through the bickering, his expression dead serious as he says they need to find Morja now. With that, the whole crew heads toward the giant, totally not evil skull cave entrance. Reaching the dark opening, Mel announces she will light the way, conjuring a few glowing orbs. Just inside, they find piles of loot, realizing it is all gear stolen from other adventurers. Horus suddenly spots something below them, exclaiming that he has found her. Peering over the edge, they see a massive cavern teeming with goblins and someone collapsed in the middle. A closer look confirms their worst fears. It is Morja, completely unconscious on the cavern floor. Our boy is ready to charge in, but the support girl grabs his cloak, telling him to wait, because standing over Morja is a goblin shaman in a skull mask, looking very much in charge. And sitting right behind the shaman is a ridiculously huge goblin just casually observing the scene. Isis wonders if that is a goblin king, but the knight clarifies that a beast that big is a goblin giant. This whole team realizes they cannot just charge in, not with the shaman's magic and the giant's raw power. So Isis puts a hand on Horus's shoulder, telling him and Phi to leave this part to her. With a confident smirk, she declares she will just blow the entire area away in the blink of an eye. But the support girl immediately objects, yelling that Morja would get caught in that blast too. Phi then declares she is their secret weapon, and with divine protection they can fight, asking Horus for backup. And Horus is just completely floored by their trust, looking a little flustered by the whole plan. Isis just sighs, agreeing to the plan since there is really no other choice. Meanwhile, the goblin leader is monologuing to his troops, completely unaware of the doom approaching. Horus listens to the strategy, his face a mask of pure, cold focus. This knight lays it out. They are outnumbered, but these goblins have a weakness for shiny things. Holding one of Mel's light orbs, Horus gives the go-ahead with a dangerously confident smirk. Part 1 of the plan kicks off with a giant golem smashing through the goblin ranks, a perfect distraction. Under a camouflage cloak, Horus notes the golem is working and it is time to sneak in. He then realizes he is not alone under there, getting a very close-up view of the support girl. She asks what is up and he just plays it cool, pretending he was just scouting the area. From outside, Mel yells at them to get cozier because apparently this is a rom-com now. Playing matchmaker mid-mission, she physically shoves them together for maximum awkwardness. And our boy immediately gets a nosebleed, the ultimate hero's weakness, before saying it is go time. So flashing back a bit, we see how this absolutely brilliant plan was hatched. This strategy is simple. Phi and the knight cause a ruckus while Horus and Mel go for the rescue. Of course, the support girl pipes up, asking if they are forgetting she can fight too. Horus clarifies he is not fighting until Morja is safe, he just needs Mel's magic for a flashbang. This knight and Isis are totally on board with their distraction duty, looking way too smug about it. With everyone in agreement, the operation officially kicks off. Isis immediately gets to work, unleashing her power to throw the goblin horde into chaos. This commotion catches the shaman's eye, who turns to see what is messing up his big evil ceremony. This goblin shaman screeches, finally noticing the uninvited guests at his evil ceremony. He is immediately targeted by a magic blast, forcing our boy to dive for cover. At the same time, the goblin giant lumbers forward, ready to join the fight. Horus realizes their cover is completely blown, so much for the stealth approach. That giant raises a massive axe, preparing to turn them into a fine red mist, but Horus throws up a sand wall just in time, blocking the devastating blow. He yells for Mel, signaling it is time for the flashbang they talked about, and she delivers, unleashing a blinding flash of light magic right on cue. Both the shaman and the giant are completely stunned, shielding their eyes from the blast. With the bosses distracted, Horus makes a dead sprint toward his sister. He scoops Morja into his arms, finally reaching her side amid the chaos. His expression is pure focus. The rescue is all that matters now. He hands Morja to Isis and the support girl, telling them to take care of her. Meanwhile, the shaman recovers, looking absolutely furious that his prize was just stolen. His giant buddy is also roaring, clearly not happy about being flashbanged. Isis points out the giant is now glowing with enhancement magic. This just got way harder. Horus just smirks, saying he can finally go all out now that Morja's safe. Then he summons a whole storm of sand spears, surrounding the giant completely. This shaman is just staring, completely shocked by this sudden display of overwhelming power, and with a single gesture he sends every single spear flying right at them. This shaman gets absolutely obliterated by the sand spear storm, a direct hit. But the goblin giant just walks out of the dust, completely unharmed, which is not great. Even the knight is impressed by the display while Isis just looks on ever the cool customer. Meanwhile, Morja finally starts to stir, groggily calling out for her brother. Her vision is still blurry, but she sees a familiar face looking down at her. Horace is just so relieved, telling her she is finally awake and safe with him. For a moment she just stares, the gears in her head slowly turning. Then it all comes rushing back and she throws her arms around him in a tearful hug. He just holds her, gently telling her that everything's going to be all right now. This support girl is crying with relief, but Isis warns her this is not the time to get sentimental, because Horace is already pointing back at the giant, reminding everyone the job is not done. Morja just buries her face in his chest, saying she has missed his scent so much. She confesses she could not bear it anymore and was terrified every single day. Then she asks him to hold her tighter and demand more of her, which gets some weird looks from the peanut gallery. Our poor support girl is completely flustered by this very intense sibling reunion. All she can do is watch as Morja clings to Horace like her life depends on it. Morja looks up from the hug, but her expression is not exactly one of pure relief anymore. In fact, the support girl realizes she is getting a death glare, a look reserved for enemies. Pulling away just enough, she asks her brother a very important question. Pointing at the girls, she asks who these witches are that are trying to steal him from her. Horace calmly explains that these witches are actually his friends who helped rescue her. This support girl is just speechless, completely floored by the accusation. Morja then offers a very quick apology for her rude words. But her eyes flash with a dangerous glint as she adds a big however. Then she is right back to clinging to him, vowing she will never let anyone take him away. Yikes. Even the knight is weirded out, noting she was never this clingy before her capture. He then points out the obvious: she is still wearing goblinish shackles, which might be a problem. So they place the chains on the ground, ready to break them off. And Horace immediately tries to slice them apart with a sand blade. Only for everyone to see the chains are completely unscratched, which is a new problem. Our boy just tells everyone to stand back, saying he has got this handled. Another powerful strike does absolutely nothing, with the knight helpfully pointing out they are still intact. He then asks Fi if she can do anything, guessing the shackles are cursed. Fi looks like she has an idea, asking if she can please give it a try. With everyone's attention on the cuffs, Morja just points down at them. And the knight smugly declares that of course he could remove them easily, nobody is buying it. This whole team just stares, completely baffled by this whole bizarre situation. Suddenly the shackles start talking and Morja absolutely loses her mind. This knight yells at the talking chains to stop because they are hurting her as they glow. But the shackles just tell her to back off because they have their own will and find her creepy. Isis notes that Fi used some pretty interesting magic, though Fi just admits that it failed. Horace is completely lost, asking for literally any kind of explanation for what just happened. Fi explains her magic gives life force to objects, so she tried to just ask the shackles to come off. And now the shackles are a whole person, complaining that restraining people is her job and this is super annoying. As Fi keeps trying to reason with her, the shackle person just calls her a persistent little nuisance. She then offers a twisted deal: she will let Morja go if Fi takes her place in the cuffs. Morja immediately shuts that down, yelling that she will not let her rescuer make that kind of sacrifice. So Horace turns to the knight, asking if his spatial magic can just phase Morja's hands out. But the shackle person, who is now a cat girl for some reason, says that will kill her instantly. This means, she declares with a very intense look, that she and Morja are stuck together for a while. She follows this up with a dramatic sigh, as if this is the biggest inconvenience in the world for her. Deciding she has no choice, she gives herself a name. From now on, she is Case. Case then tells Morja she should feel honored to be restrained by someone so special. She also casually mentions other names would have been fine, but Case works. She is not picky or anything. With that bizarre introduction over, Horace suggests they check the rest of the cave for goblin treasure. He remembers that goblins are obsessed with hoarding shiny things, so there might be something useful. This long-shot plan is to find a magic tool that can actually get Case off of Morja. Fi tries to talk to Morja, who just gives her a death glare and asks what she wants now. Now getting a piggyback ride from Case, Morja complains that this whole arrangement is just absurd. And the other girls are freaking out, yelling that no siblings are this close and Case is way too hands-on. Morja gets way too close, telling Horace her world should be filled only with him. Red flags are officially waving. Case physically restrains her, telling her to show some gratitude, while Fi just panics in the background. This logic offered is that Fi should take her place because she is the strongest, which makes zero sense to anyone. But Fi has her own idea, casting a teleportation spell with a determined look. This spell zaps Case and Morja, catching the shackle person completely off guard. Morja thanks them for the rescue, but there is a very ominous however in her tone. And now she is wearing the shackles herself, declaring that her brother's love is a totally separate issue. With that sorted, the team ventures deeper into the goblin cave, looking for that treasure hoard. Suddenly, Horace stops, hearing a faint sound in the darkness ahead. He yells out that he can hear voices, putting everyone on high alert. They follow the sound to a makeshift prison cell built into the cave wall. This moment they get close, Horace gags from the overwhelming stench coming from inside. Peeking through the bars, they find a group of terrified demi-human children locked away. Without a second thought, the bars are smashed to pieces in a shower of rock and metal. Horace gives a quick thanks to Ein, who just shrugs it off like breaking down a prison is all in a day's work. He then reaches out to the kids, gently telling them they are safe and can come out now. But the first girl just flinches away from his hand, absolutely terrified. This gives our boy a sudden, gut-wrenching realization. He sees that all the children are cowering in fear, not of the goblins, but of him. Morja looks down at her own cuffs, understanding these kids were slaves, just like she was moments ago. One of the kids grabs a makeshift club, clearly not trusting these newcomers one bit. This cat-tiered one demands to know who they are, accusing them of being slavers. Even Isis seems a little taken aback by the accusation, looking down at the scene. Calmly, she steps forward, telling the kid they are here to rescue them, not hurt them. Her pristine shoes land on the filthy cave floor, a total contrast to the surroundings. This kid is just completely stunned, not knowing what to believe anymore. Isis just holds their gaze, her expression radiating pure, unwavering kindness. Then she spots another child, collapsed and unresponsive on the ground. Without hesitation, she unleashes her life magic, a glowing healing circle appearing over them. Instantly, the magic begins to work, soothing the unconscious child. This other children watch in total shock, realizing the kid's injuries are completely gone. Horace gently asks if they will trust them now, trying to break through their fear. But the lead kid just screams that it is useless, that they cannot be saved. She then reveals a cursed brand, explaining they have all been marked by the goblins. Isis immediately understands the grim implication. Their bodies were altered by goblin magic. This kid looks away, completely defeated, saying their words of rescue are meaningless now. Suddenly, the slave collar around her neck just shatters into pieces, falling to the ground. She is just frozen in disbelief, staring at the broken collar in front of her. Case smugly points out that a primitive goblin collar is nothing to a high-class restraint like her. And Isis adds that with her life magic, she can just rewind their bodies to before the curse. This bunny girl looks down and sure enough, the cursed brand on her is completely gone. In total disbelief, she just stammers that the goblin magic has completely vanished. All of their slave collars now lie shattered on the cave floor, totally useless. Isis calmly confirms that the goblin's magic is broken, meaning they are not slaves anymore. All the kids are just looking at each other, a wave of pure relief washing over them. Their celebration is cut short though, as one points out they are still registered with a slavers' guild. But Horace just gives them a gentle smile, telling them there is nothing to worry about in his desert. This is just too much for the lead kid, who immediately starts tearing up. Wiping away her tears, she finally manages to choke out a heartfelt thank you. Our boy just gives her the kindest, most reassuring look he can muster. With the kids freed, Horace suggests they get back to the original plan, treasure hunting. He uses his sand sense to scout ahead since they are still deep in a goblin nest after all. This suddenly clicks for the kids, who ask if he is the one who defeated the goblins, even the giant one. He casually confirms it, and the kids are just completely starstruck by their new hero. Ein starts hyping him up, calling him a sand magic user fit to be a king, which gets a side-eye from Morja. And now all the kids are just staring at him with wide eyes, whispering a king. One of the rescued kids immediately starts trying to give him a thank you massage, making him super uncomfortable. Suddenly, a new voice cuts in as a woman appears and talks about evolving monsters into divine beasts here. This kids, completely missing the danger, are just amazed by words like castle and evolution. She just gives them a smug little smile, confirming that yes, that is exactly what is happening. This new woman immediately gets handsy with Horace, smugly explaining he is a future king. She then clarifies that a king's job is to be waited on by women, which is one heck of a take. This gives the rescued kids the completely wrong idea, wondering if kings are just allowed to be perverts. Horace absolutely loses it, shoving her away and screaming for Fi to do something. But she just pulls him right back in, asking if he'd rather grab her directly, zero shame. Her hand then guides his, making the whole situation about 10 times more awkward for our boy, and he just lets out a shriek of pure, unadulterated terror. Meanwhile, the kids are getting an eyeful, peeking through their fingers at this very educational moment. Not to be outdone, the rest of the girls jump in, declaring they will serve him too. Suddenly, it is a full-on dogpile, with everyone offering their services while Horace is just trying to breathe. This kids then turn to Isis, innocently asking what her role is in all this. Blushing, Isis tries to explain they are just good friends and all this serving is totally unnecessary. Her very reasonable explanation is met with blank, uncomprehending stares from the demi-human children. Then they start cheering for her not to lose, turning her denial into a challenge. Isis is horrified. As Horace tries to crawl away from the mob, the kids warn that he will be snatched up if she does not act. A flicker of something competitive crosses Isis's face. Looks like the peer pressure is working. At that moment, a hand gently tugs on Horace's sleeve, stopping him in his tracks. He turns around, surprised, and calls out Isis's name. And there she is, blushing furiously and looking like she's about to do something she will regret. She can barely get the words out, stammering as she tries to make her own move. Isis's stammered confession lands with devastating power, leaving Horace a blushing mess. This kids, however, completely misread the room, thinking the king just got hit by a witch's curse. Moving on from that social train wreck, they finally find the goblin's treasure hoard. One of the rescued cat kids is just in awe of the glittering cavern they have stumbled into. She asks the king what is wrong, and Horace has to gently remind her he is not actually royalty. Turns out the entire floor is made of jewel sand, which is a new one for everybody. And we are not talking cheap stuff, this is literal diamond dust. There are also rubies mixed in for a bit of color, plus a healthy dose of sapphires glittering everywhere, and even pearls because why not at this point? This new woman explains the pearls came from shellfish the goblins were eating, a weirdly practical detail. Fi is already scheming, realizing this much wealth could be used as leverage to free Morja. Horace points out that jewels are useless without a market, but the woman counters that assets are always good to have. As he touches the glittering ground, an idea starts to form in his head. This woman suddenly realizes the connection. It is not just jewels, it is sand asterisk. So Horace just casually whips up a golem made of pure diamond, as one does. Immediately obsessed, Fi declares they are taking the diamond golem home for her brother. Our boy agrees to take what they can, planning to store the rest back at the castle. Meanwhile, the mysterious woman starts carving strange runes into the cave wall. This entire group then stands before the finished inscription, wondering what new secret they have just uncovered. This woman's inscription lays down the law: this land now belongs to the Desert King and all its resources are off limits. Our boy is just stunned, realizing she just claimed this entire territory in his name. To get everyone home, he summons a literal tsunami of sand to ride across the desert, because walking is for peasants. All the rescued kids are having the time of their lives, absolutely amazed by the high-speed sand surfing. Morja, of course, takes all the credit for him, telling a kid that her brother is the amazing one, not the magic. Horace turns to Fi, probably needing a reality check after all this king business starts sinking in. He is still processing that the rune she carved is now the official, binding law of his desert. She just shrugs it off like it was nothing, completely unbothered by the god-tier move she just pulled. Her logic is simple: since he is not an official king, he has to physically mark his territory to claim it. As they arrive, the demi-human kids are just staring up, completely speechless at the sight of his home. And yeah, it is a full-blown castle, which makes the whole king thing feel a lot more real all of a sudden. A goofy-looking camel creature runs up to greet them, making some very, very strange noises. Horace explains he rescued this little guy too, who the kids immediately recognize as a camel. Morja promptly introduces herself to the animal as its new little sister, which is a choice. Then she is totally bewildered, wondering how in the world she can have a full conversation with it. Fi explains to Horace that she had to basically force Morja to come to the desert because she refused to. Isis then asks if Fi's methods were maybe a little too harsh on our boy. Fi, with zero shame, completely denies being harsh in the slightest, total poker face. In a flashback, she recalls her brothers being exiled, revealing her attitude was shaped by past trauma. But now she is certain, this whole ordeal has proven Horace is worthy of her trust and loyalty. Fi's flashback reveals she had no time for immaturity after her brothers were cast out. Tears welling in her eyes, she vows to serve Horace with everything she has from now on. Horace seems touched by the declaration, looking over and saying Morja's name softly. Watching them, the mysterious woman comments that the king's sister has sharp judgment. Meanwhile, back at the goblin nest, a new group arrives under the cover of night. They start investigating the aftermath, finding the area completely torn apart. This goblin's makeshift defenses are just shattered remnants scattered across the sand. This trail of destruction leads them directly to the entrance of the goblin's lair. And a new guy appears on the scene, a uniformed man with a huge nose and a bad attitude. His grumpy demeanor vanishes the second he sees the treasure room, completely floored by the jewel sand. He quickly deduces someone wiped out the goblins, freed the slaves, and took the treasure. But then a strange sound from deeper within the cave makes him stop short, and he finds the rune, instantly recognizing the official claim on the territory by the Desert King. This completely throws him for a loop, questioning why a divine beast would bother saving slaves. Ultimately, he just scoffs at the warning, deciding it is nothing more than an empty threat. So a new plan forms. He will claim he killed the goblins and use the rune to hoard the jewels. With his greedy little scheme locked in, he makes his way out into the desert night. This scene then shifts to the sprawling capital city of Eldra, a major hub in the Republic. We then zoom in on a particularly imposing building, clearly a place of some importance. And a close-up on the sign confirms the absolute worst. It is the Slavers Guild headquarters. Inside the Slavers Guild, a report is being delivered over a very fancy steak dinner. This guild master, a seriously unpleasant-looking guy, just chews away while listening. Wiping his mouth, he seems to be enjoying both the food and the intel he is getting. He thanks the informant for his hard work. It is the same greedy guy from the Goblin Cave. Making sure the info is exclusive, he confirms that no one else knows about this yet. This guild master then gives a little gesture, a silent command to his subordinate. And just like that, the informant is handed a hefty bag as his reward for the tip. This big-nosed guy Toxer points out how valuable this information is for future plans. His boss just gives him a smug, knowing little smile, clearly one step ahead. Then he bursts out laughing, declaring he loves a man with ambition and greed. Toxer smirks right back, thinking he has just made a powerful new ally. He confidently agrees to the deal, ready to take his payment and get to work. But the deal was a lie, as the guild master's men immediately move in and execute him. A serving girl stumbles upon the scene, completely frozen in shock at the body. She screams out Toxer's name as another guild member rushes into the room. Her panic is mirrored by the subordinate, who is just as horrified by the sudden violence. This guild master, however, is just annoyed that a dead body might hurt his business's reputation. A new player enters the game, a dapper cat boy offering to handle the cleanup for a fee. This boss scoffs, asking if this stray cat's company needs a handout from him, but the cat boy just smiles, casually threatening to kill him if he breaks their contract. This guild master just scoffs at the Catboy's crew, clearly unimpressed by the very real threat. Meanwhile, Toxer's body is still cooling on the floor, a lovely centerpiece for the room. One of the Catboy's associates gets ready to box up the evidence because tidiness is key. With a flick of his wrist, the body is just gone, dissolved into shadow magic without a trace. Now that the mess is handled, the Catboy casually orders a nice meal, priorities straight. His Wolfman bodyguard Alibaba just stands there while his boss looks incredibly smug. This Catboy muses that Toxer's intel about the desert is interesting, but they should not rush in. He explains their funds from the Maghreb Empire are drying up, so they need a new venture. With Eldra's currency tied to the Empire, his company sees a golden opportunity to profit from the chaos. Plus, he points out the desert is a known treasure trove of resources and juicy rumors. A sly grin spreads across his face as a new, very profitable idea starts to click into place. Elsewhere, a cat-girl adventurer worries about a friend who is always off in the desert. Her worry is immediately justified as a sand beast erupts right in front of her. She is in full-blown panic mode, barely holding herself together as things go south fast. Surrounded by useless junk, she realizes none of her gear is right for this fight. And then a colossal sand serpent bursts from the ground, ready to swallow her whole. Completely outmatched, she just screams for anyone, literally anyone, to come and help her. Suddenly, a powerful voice unleashes a spell, the Great Sandiron Spear. Massive iron-sand spears erupt from below, impaling the giant serpent from every angle. This cat girl can only stare in awe as the colossal beast is taken down in a single, overwhelming attack. And from above, her savior appears, a blonde-haired guy who just one-shotted a giant monster. He immediately calls down, checking to see if she is alright after that whole near-death experience. She is just stunned that a person actually showed up to save her bacon out here. Turns out she's not totally free yet, still awkwardly tangled in the dead serpent's tail. He tries to reassure her, promising he is harmless and will not take advantage of the situation. His reassurances just make him look super suspicious, and now he is a blushing, panicking mess. With the immediate danger over, they are left standing by the absolutely massive serpent corpse. Still completely terrified, she is begging him to just spare her life and let her go. Horace is just baffled, reminding her that he literally just saved her life a second ago. She is not buying it, putting up a paw and telling him they are just going to wait right there. Then she starts digging through her bag, muttering about how she is way too smart to be tricked by some human. She pulls out a potion to turn human, and Isis just deadpans that the girl is a complete idiot. A strange light suddenly flashes across the empty desert landscape, and after a moment we see a pair of boots standing firmly on the sand. This potion worked. She is now a human girl named Persia, though she has still got the cat speak tick. Horace introduces himself, then asks Persia why a Kate Sith like her was out in the desert alone. This completely blows her mind. How could he possibly know she was a Kate Sith? He points out the obvious, her appearance did not really change all that much, dude. She completely loses it, accusing him of making her body move on its own and yelling at him to stop. Our boy desperately tries to explain he is not doing anything, while Isis judges her entire existence. Persia is absolutely convinced that all humans are just savage, untrustworthy beasts. Her imagination immediately jumps to the worst possible outcome, leaving Horace completely speechless. Isis tries to reassure her that the master is not like that, but Persia is certain he is hiding his true nature. To prove her point, Isis decides to share a little something about herself. She explains she is a honey ant and is actually doing incredibly well under his protection. This revelation seems to catch Persia off guard, maybe making her reconsider her snap judgment. Still, she is only willing to trust him a tiny bit, nervously tapping her spoon in thought. And by a tiny bit, I mean she is tapping that spoon like her life depends on it. Then Isis casually mentions her antennae belong to Horace, and Persia's brain just blue screens all over again. Horace finally cuts in, asking what in the world she was doing wandering the desert alone. With a grand flourish, she proudly announces she is here to expand her business ventures. Her brilliant plan is to exploit the harsh desert for its rare resources and creatures. She then smugly asks if he is just some clueless camel herder, totally misreading the situation. This whole group just turns and starts walking, leaving her sitting there in the sand. Realizing she has been left behind, Persia scrambles to catch up, yelling for them to wait. But her complaints die in her throat when she sees his home is a literal fortress. A memory suddenly clicks. She recalls rumors of an exiled prince with sand magic from the Maghreb Empire. She puts it all together, acting like it is a wild coincidence, while Horace looks deeply unimpressed. Her attention then shifts to the lush oasis surrounding the castle, a total anomaly out here, and she is amazed by the watchtower, which is apparently built from compost and humus, truly high class. Back at the fortress, Isis is the first to greet Horace, welcoming him home. And a new girl, Phi, proudly shows off a massive beast she hunted for dinner. Priorities, people. Persia is just baffled there is another human here, while Isis jokes that Horace is a total cat-girl magnet. Sizing him up, Persia decides this Kate Sith merchant has a good eye for business, but hers is way better. Mora steps in, offering Persia a friendly little spar to test her mettle, and Persia is not feeling friendly. Horace is completely lost, just echoing the word spar like he has never heard it before. Mora explains this is a training exercise to find and counter the master's weaknesses, a very polite way to say I am gonna beat you up. Taking their positions, she announces she will attack first, and Horace just has to deal with it. With a calm, determined smile, she tells him to get ready for what is coming. Then she summons a literal tidal wave out of thin air because sparring means attempted drowning now. This absolute wall of water comes crashing down, about to completely engulf our boy. He throws up a magic circle, desperately casting a sand wall to defend himself, and a massive slab of sand erupts from the ground, forming a barrier against the flood. But the sheer force of the water slams into the wall, cracking it almost instantly. His defense shatters completely, and the wave just plows right through, swallowing him whole. After the chaos, all that is left is Horus's legs sticking out of the mud while everyone else panics. He finally bursts out of the muck, gasping for air after that brutal, very wet lesson. Morja calmly confirms his suspicion. Yep, that is his big weakness right there. Sitting down, Horus realizes the obvious. Water hardens sand, making his magic totally useless. Fi then drops a bomb. Morja can use fire, water, and wind magic, making her an absolute powerhouse. Morja explains her attack was a high-level combo of wind, water, and scorching heat. Still kneeling in the mud, Horus asks Fi to set up another training round immediately. With a look of pure focus, he is clearly trying to figure out a counter on the fly. Morja just smirks, asking if he has already come up with a brand new plan. So she happily obliges, summoning another massive water vortex for round 2. This time Horus is ready, throwing up a magic circle for a different kind of sand magic. He summons an iron sand wall, which actually manages to block the water this time. For a second he looks triumphant, thinking he has finally got it figured out. But Morja's calm smile tells a different story. She is not even trying yet. This wall holds, and she gives him a passing grade on his new water countermeasure. Watching from the side, Persia pours out a vial, saying more countermeasures are needed. This liquid she pours immediately starts fizzing, eating away at the material it touches. She points out his iron wall is vulnerable to corrosion, which would make it brittle and useless. Against a strong acid, she lectures, he'd need something way more resistant like gold or platinum. Then she suggests a gold sand wall, probably thinking she is a tactical genius. So they test it out on a new wall, which is now shiny, golden, and totally rust-proof. Persia's jaw hits the floor when she realizes he actually coated the wall in real gold. She absolutely loses it, demanding to know where he got that much gold. He just says the treasury. Her brain just completely short-circuits at the sheer casual wealth on display. Then her greedy merchant instincts kick in, and she nervously asks if she can see it. Horus leads her into the treasury, and it is just an entire, ridiculously opulent hall made of gold. She tries to wrap her head around the value, starting with a single gleaming ingot. Her brain does the math. Each block weighs an absolutely insane 500 kilograms, which means the floor, the walls, everything is made of this stuff. Standing in the middle of it all, she calculates there is over 50 tons of gold in this room alone. Horus then casually drops that this is only 1% of their total assets, completely breaking her brain. To make matters worse, Fi chimes in that they also have sand mixed with rubies and diamonds. All her previous suspicion instantly evaporates as she grabs his hands, suddenly calling him Lord Horus. She is now desperately begging him to do business with her company Alibaba, promising he will not regret it. He just calmly accepts her offer, telling her to drop the formal title. Morja cannot help but tease her, pointing out how her true cat nature is showing now that money's involved. Pulling herself together, Persia properly reintroduces herself as a merchant from the Eldra Republic. Meanwhile, the cat boy from earlier is discussing Eldra's trade relationship with the Maghreb Empire. He notes that while the Empire is hoarding resources, Eldra's wealth is still flowing into their lands. Back at the fortress, Persia passionately argues a trade deal would secure Horus vital supplies and Eldra's trust. Horus considers her proposal, realizing that building that trust could also help protect his hidden sister. Seeing the clear benefits, he immediately agrees to her business proposition on the spot. With the deal settled, he wastes no time and calls out for someone named Agido, and a massive ant creature suddenly appears, awaiting its command. Its rider, a guy in some serious armor, looks totally confused about being summoned so suddenly. Horus gets the urgent report. An armed group is rampaging through one of their jewel caves, and we meet a new face, a woman who is gently tending to the giant ant Agido. She pats its head, confirming that her healing has gotten everyone back in fighting shape. Agido's rider just watches silently as Horus asks what is going on with their ant forces. This rider reports that the invaders are a human group led by a fat guy, and they have brought a small giant slave. Persia immediately recognizes the description, asking if it is that guy, and the rider confirms her fears. She identifies the leader as Toxer, a ruthless merchant who uses adventurers and a giant slave for his dirty work. With a serious look, she warns Horus to be extremely careful dealing with this crew. Cut to the desert where a carriage is baking under the brutal sun, its occupants clearly miserable. And there is our villain, Toxer, looking like a sweaty, angry thumb with a forehead tattoo. He is yelling at a poor kid with a collar to fan him harder. Peak management skills right there. This terrified child can only whisper yes, on the absolute verge of tears from exhaustion. Toxera just scoffs at the kid's struggle, calling them a pathetic weakling. His whole crew is just as desperate, yelling for water while their giant sits patiently by the cart. Two mages try to summon some water, but one is already complaining about the effort. All their magic produces is a pathetic little dribble of water before the spell completely fizzles out. This caster just collapses from exhaustion, totally spent from that tiny magical feat. Even the giant looks over, hopefully asking for a drink of water after all that. But the other mage tells Toxera they are completely tapped out, their magic has its limits. He looks absolutely wrecked, sweating and panting from the magical and literal heat. Toxer is absolutely fuming, his patience completely shot after his mages failed him. He grumbles about how useless his hired help is, completely ignoring their exhaustion. One of the mages is literally being held up by his friend, insisting he is at his limit. With a sneer, Toxera complains about paying good money for such incompetent grunts. He then just barks at everyone to get a move on and stop wasting his precious time. His whole motivation is a rumored treasure hoard supposedly sleeping in this desert of death. Suddenly, a massive blur rushes past, and he panics that someone else will get the treasure first. He turns around to find his entire carriage has been completely obliterated in an instant. Someone screams that it is a monster, yelling for everyone to get ready for a fight. Toxera looks up and the sheer terror on his face says it all. Yeah, that is the look of a man who just realized he is no longer the biggest bully on the playground, because a colossal sand snake just erupted from the ground looking very, very hungry. His fear quickly twists back into pure annoyance. This guy's priorities are a real work of art. So he shoves the collared kid forward, screaming at him to be a sacrifice. What a class act. Even the giant slave looks completely stunned by this new low in cowardice. This snake opens its massive jaws, ready to swallow the terrified child whole, but at the last second the giant lunges, grabbing the snake's head to stop the attack. This kid screams out the giant's name, Jack, who is now wrestling a literal kaiju. And Toxera is just cackling from the sidelines, ordering his slave to kill the beast for him. Jack just grits his teeth, straining with all his might to hold the monster back. With a massive roar, Jack grapples the thrashing sand snake, trying to pin it down. This snake's eye is oddly calm, almost like it is not even fighting back anymore. Toxera is absolutely livid, demanding to know why Jack has not killed the beast yet. Out of nowhere, a new hooded guy shows up, desperately screaming for someone to protect him. He screams a name, Orthros, calling for backup, and his call is answered by a monstrous two-headed wolf which immediately lunges into the fray. This wolf beast, Orthros, wastes no time, sinking its fangs deep into the snake's scales. With one brutal bite, the massive sand snake is taken down, its head hitting the sand. Our favorite villain, Toxera, is just sitting in the dirt, completely stunned by this sudden turn of events. This new guy calmly tells the collared kid that everything's fine now, his monster pet standing guard. This mysterious savior then explains that the snake is not a monster you can just kill, implying it is something else entirely. Toxera's fear instantly flips to greasy opportunism, praising the newcomer for a job well done. In the same breath, he turns on Jack, screaming that this is all his fault. This guy's logic is just flawless. He almost died, so clearly it is the slave's fault. For this failure, he starts whipping Jack, who is just begging him to stop the senseless punishment. Jack just takes the beating, gritting his teeth through the pain and humiliation. Meanwhile, the hooded man watches this pathetic display with a look of utter contempt. After the tantrum, he orders the mages to fix the cart and Jack to pull it, still obsessed with finding a jewel cave. So now Toxera gets to ride in a makeshift rickshaw, looking like the king of absolute losers. That smug look on his face says it all. He is back in control and could not care less about anyone else. Meanwhile, Ajito arrives on the scene and Toxera's crew immediately spots the giant ant. They are deep inside a rocky canyon, the very jewel cave they were looking for. One of Toxera's men reports that the ants are hauling out jewels, asking what to do. Toxera just gets this disgusting, greedy smirk on his face. His order is simple: steal everything of value, no questions asked. From a safe distance, Persia explains Toxera is also after the very slave children Horus just rescued. She calls him a merchant without a heart, which is putting it extremely mildly. Morja points out their obvious goal is the sand mixed with jewels. Horus asks if only he and Persia were the ones who knew about this place. But Persia figures it is not surprising that a guy like Toxera would have scouts looking for resources. For the armored rider, it does not matter who these invaders are. He is ready to deliver some iron punishment to anyone who dares trespass on their land. Horus's expression turns deadly serious, his patience completely gone. With a single command, he tells his team to move out immediately. Their destination is a cave entrance that looks like a massive skeletal beast's maw. Two of Toxera's goons are standing guard, completely unaware of what is coming. Horus suddenly appears before one of the kids, promising his protection. This kid, who has this weird wing thing on his head, just looks back in surprise, which is when one of the guards finally notices something is off. And then it is on, the armored rider and Horus leap down to start the attack. One of Toxera's goons finally spots them, demanding to know who the hell they are. But he barely has time to process the situation before he is completely overwhelmed. This armored rider just blitzes past, sending the poor guy flying without a second thought. His buddy with the ponytail steps up, ready for a fight against the armored trespasser, only to get his weapon magically snatched right out of his hands with spatial magic. He is left completely disarmed and confused, wondering where his spear just went. With the guards distracted, Horus unleashes a massive sand magic attack of his own, and a literal sand geyser erupts, sending the rest of the grunts flying like ragdolls. Morja just watches from the sidelines, sighing that it looks like her turn to fight will not even come. After the dust settles, the armored rider offers a hand to one of the defeated men. But the guy is still defiant, screaming about how they are trespassing on his master's territory. This rider just deadpans that he has no idea what territory he is talking about, zero respect given. Turns out they are just hired adventurers who were told to find some jewels and hold the line. Morja looks down on them unimpressed and asking what their real intentions are. They spill everything, they were hired for a reward, gave up the info, and are now drugged and cannot go home. Horace listens to their pathetic story, his expression turning surprisingly thoughtful. He then asks his sister Isis if she'd be willing to use her healing magic on them. She agrees, pointing out they have lost their will to fight and were kind to her in the desert. This lead adventurer is just stunned by this unexpected act of mercy. Putting the pieces together, he asks Horace if he is the rumored exiled prince of the Maghreb Empire. Horace's eyes narrow as he realizes his secret location is also known to the El Dorado Republic. He thanks the adventurer for the intel but makes it clear he will not forgive them for hurting his people. This lead adventurer just looks back, totally resigned and accepting his fate. With that said, Horace turns to leave, the adventurer quietly acknowledging his judgment. Meanwhile, deep inside the cave, a greedy laugh echoes off the rocky walls. And it is our favorite thumb, Toxer, absolutely losing his mind over the sight of jewels. He throws his arms wide, declaring it is all his because finding it means you own it, obviously. His orders are simple: search every inch of the cave and secure the entire area for his company. Just then, a goon runs in with a report: multiple intruders are here and they are using sand magic. One of the mages, looking like he just left a boy band, whips up a scrying spell to see what is up. And what a crew they are! Horace and his whole squad are walking in, looking ready to end this. Through his magic mirror, the mage reports seeing a knight, a woman, a kid, and several demi-humans. Their plan is to counter the sand magic with their own superior water formation magic. So they unleash a massive magical wave, a crushing water wave to be exact. This now freed adventurers watch, with their leader noting that sand magic cannot possibly stop that attack. This absolute torrent of water comes crashing down the cave tunnel, ready to wipe them out. But the lead adventurer's face just screams, "Wait, what?" as something goes very wrong. Because a perfectly smooth, massive wall of sand just erupted from the ground, stopping the wave cold. Horace just smirks, noting that some advice he got from Faye really came in handy. And the adventurer just stares in disbelief, completely stunned that he actually blocked it. Horace reveals he was ready for water magic, all thanks to a tip from Faye. And the lead adventurer finally connects the dots. That is not just sand, it is iron sand. Not one to be outdone, the boy band mage fires off another, more concentrated water spell. His buddy watches, wondering if this new approach will finally break through the defense. This time it is a high-pressure water spear designed to pierce right through the barrier. But Horace just watches it approach, looking completely unbothered by the incoming attack. It smacks into the wall and just splatters, doing absolutely nothing, which has the adventurer screaming in frustration that it is not working. Horace is not impressed. Yeah, that wall is not budging an inch. From behind cover, Morja and Persia watch, with Morja noting how persistent they are. So she dips a finger into the water, seeping through, getting a little taste test. And gets this incredibly smug look on her face. She has figured out their little trick. Turns out the mages are using salt water, trying to corrode the iron sand wall from the outside. Now she turns to Horace, asking him what he's going to do about it, before getting very asterisk handsy from behind, reminding him she can do whatever she wants with his body. Horace is obviously flustered, but knows they have got bigger problems than her advances right now. So he just yells out that the wall will not rust, telling them to give it up already. But the adventurer just shouts back that surrender is not an option. And the mage agrees, pouring even more power into his spell, vowing to finish the job. Meanwhile, Persia just looks confused, asking Horace what he meant by expanding the wall. With a deep rumble, the iron sand wall begins to expand, turning defense into a slow, crushing offense. This adventurer is just sputtering, realizing the wall is not just holding, it is actually growing. Now the mages are being forced back, scrambling away from the advancing sand. Their own attack has backfired spectacularly, leaving them standing in a growing puddle of salt water. His face just screams, "We have made a terrible, terrible mistake," as the situation dawns on him. Persia, on the other hand, looks smug as hell, whispering that it is all going to plan. She then flicks a tiny vial right into the puddle at their feet. And just like that, the whole group gets lit up like a Christmas tree, screaming in agony. Horace looks on, a little stunned, while Persia just enjoys the show she orchestrated. A moment later, they are all twitching on the ground, and Persia's best guess is they are probably fine. She explains it was a simple shock potion, made way more effective thanks to the salt water they helpfully provided. With the mages down for the count, Horace lets the massive iron sand wall crumble back to nothing. At the end of the now clear tunnel, Toxer awaits, looking thoroughly unimpressed. He immediately welcomes the thieves, which is a bold move for a guy actively robbing the place. Then the thumb man starts screeching about how they are trying to steal his asterisk precious jewels. Horace and Persia just stare back, their expressions screaming, "Are you serious right now?" A lackey chimes in that this is Toxera's land, asking if their names are written on it anywhere. But Toxera's rage suddenly shifts to a slimy, calculating look as he sizes up the newcomers. His gaze lands on the women in the party, and he makes the generous offer for them to become his pets. And we get a quick, horrifying peek into his mind, where he is already picturing them all in his personal harem. This women in Horace's party just stare back, their expressions screaming pure, unadulterated disgust. Horace immediately steps in front of them, his face completely devoid of patience for this creep. With a stone-cold glare, he warns Toxera not to look at his people with those disgusting eyes. But Toxera just scoffs, calling him a kid and promising to take whatever and whoever he wants. He then unleashes some kind of nasty, dark magic from his hand. and aims it right at one of the small, defenseless children, a truly classy move. Suddenly, the attack is intercepted, leaving Toxer completely stunned by the sudden turn of events. It seems his own magic has splashed back onto his arm, which is now a corrupted, goopy mess. This dark power starts corroding his flesh, and he can only let out a pained grunt. His men immediately panic, rushing to his side and screaming about needing a high potion for his arm. Toxera glares at the heroes, furiously demanding to know what the hell they just did. In response, Isis just gives him this serene, terrifying smile, asking if he understands his mistake yet. She then summons a massive spiritual sphinx, declaring he has insulted its chosen one and deserves death. The sheer pressure radiating from it is so intense that Toxera can barely even breathe. In a total panic, he orders his men to capture the women alive and kill all the men on sight. He then summons his own backup, a giant two-headed wolf and an army of skeleton warriors. Isis just finds this amusing, telling her team to be ready because she is going to play a little. This armored rider steps up, declaring he will handle the skeleton army, and Horus gives the okay. He immediately follows through, smashing the bone soldiers to bits with a giant iron sand fist. Horus points forward, shouting the rider's name, Ain, and telling him to push the attack. Ain gives a firm stomp, basically saying "you got it, boss," and gets ready to move. With that, he leaps right over the giant two-headed wolf, spear ready to strike, but another one of Toxera's goons, a hooded swordsman, steps in to block his path. Ain gives him a death glare, warning him to beg for forgiveness while he still can. This swordsman just smirks back, asking if he should apologize for killing him. Total confidence. Ain's eyes narrow, he is absolutely not in the mood for this guy's trash talk. Behind the swordsman, water magic begins to churn, showing he is no pushover. This two of them collide in a massive impact, spear versus sword, and the cave shakes. Ain promises to wipe that smug grin right off his opponent's face for good, and the swordsman gets blasted back, skidding across the water-soaked floor from the sheer power. He uses the water to his advantage though, launching himself right back into the fight. But something from above catches his eye and he looks up in total shock, because Ain is now airborne, using the cave wall to dive bomb him from above. This swordsman manages to grab Ain's arm at the last second, stopping the attack cold. Their struggle erupts in a blinding flash of light and power, and as the smoke begins to clear from the impact. This swordsman is down for the count, with Ain standing over him, completely victorious. Ain just looks down, commenting on how unrefined and loveless his fighting style was. But wait, the two-headed wolf is suddenly getting jabbed with a giant needle. This defeated swordsman reveals it is a special enhancement drug, and now the wolf is getting the dose. This two-headed wolf, Orthros, gets the green light to go absolutely feral. But Isis just points, looking completely unimpressed by the giant puppy. A massive vortex erupts around her, calling them fools as the wolf gets yeeted into the air. And the swordsman can only stare, his jaw on the floor at this sudden reversal. Just like that, the roided-out wolf is getting shredded by her wind magic, while Isis declares with a flick of her finger that they never stood a chance. She reminds him he is fighting a Sphinx. Did he really think this would be a fair fight? After that absolute flex, she just strikes a pose, enjoying her easy victory. Meanwhile, in another part of the cave, a giant man kneels in defeat before a stone wall. His boss, a guy with a nose for days, orders him to get up and be his shield. This giant Jack just grits his teeth, saying everyone else is already down. With only the two of them left, Jack stands over his cowering master as Horus watches. Our boy Horus just gives them a deadpan stare, clearly over this whole situation. This boss man gets a look of grim resolve, deciding he has no other choice. So he screams at Jack to fight, activating his last resort. And Jack looks up in horror, realizing what is about to happen to him. That collar around his neck starts glowing. It is a berserker spell. He collapses in agony, screaming that he does not want this as dark power consumes him. Horus and his companion are shocked, realizing the collar was a magical control device. A close-up on the runes confirms it. This is forced, unwilling power. Horus snaps to attention, realizing the situation just got way worse. And the boss man reveals his trump card, a hostage, vowing Jack will kill everyone if they interfere. This girl gets shoved onto a magic circle, turning the whole room into a ticking time bomb. With a clenched fist, Jack fights the dark magic, trying to consume him completely. A surge of dark energy erupts from his body as the spell overpowers his will. He transforms into a full-on berserker, roaring as his body bulks up to a monstrous size. Our boy Horus watches, face grim, as he sizes up the new, unwilling opponent. Jack is just screaming in agony, completely lost to the berserker rage. Morja panics, yelling that he is going to bring the whole damn cave down on them. And Horus realizes he has to stop Jack without killing him, which is a way harder job. These two kids are having their own drama, one desperately trying to hold the other back. Breaking free, the girl runs to Horus, begging him to save Jack from this awful fate. She insists he is a kind person, pleading with them to just get that collar off him. Her desperate plea clearly hits Horus, who now looks even more determined to find a way. Morja asks the million-dollar question, how the hell do you even remove a magic collar? Persia is freaking out, asking if there is anything they can possibly do. This cat girl explains they have to analyze the spell itself to have any chance of removing it. If they can crack the spell, she thinks they can actually reverse the berserker state. That is all Horus needs to hear. He slams his hands down on a new magic circle ready to go. A brilliant light flares as his own counterspell begins to take shape on the ground. With Horace's counterspell on the ground, Jack uses his own sand sense to track everyone. And Horace desperately yells for his team to please buy him some time. This plan is simple. Everyone else just has to keep the giant berserker busy while he works. Without a second's hesitation, the party's fighters charge in to run interference, with one of the women leaping high to draw Jack's attention directly to her. It is a full-on kiting mission, with 3 of them zipping around to keep him off balance. This spearwielder darts in from another angle, basically volunteering to be the next target. All the while that collar is just glowing ominously, the source of all this madness. Morja, however, looks totally unimpressed, saying his raw power is not a problem. Jack's rage-filled eyes finally lock onto one of them and he is absolutely furious. He lets out a deafening roar right in her face, which she somehow manages to tank. A massive fist comes swinging and she barely dodges the hit that would have flattened her. Just in the nick of time, the cat girl announces the analysis is complete. It is go time. Horace points, declaring he has got this and will bind Jack with his sand magic. Iron sand immediately erupts from the ground, wrapping the berserker up tight like a mummy. Taking her chance, the cat girl flies in and lands a perfect kick right on the collar. Then pulls out her tools, bragging that since she knows the formula, this is a piece of cake. A magical lock icon appears over the runes, signaling the spell is being broken, and with a flash of light, the cursed collar shatters into a million pieces. She grabs her teammate and they book it, getting clear as Jack is finally freed from the spell. With the spell shattered, Jack collapses in a swirl of sand as the girl rushes in, ready to start healing. He is completely out cold and the cat girl just sighs, saying this whole ordeal was a total pain. This little girl gives him a massive hug the second he wakes up, overjoyed that he is back to normal. She quickly explains that it was Horace and his friends who managed to save him from that awful fate. Horace's crew looks on, all of them just relieved that the big guy made it through okay. She insists none of it was his fault, placing all the blame squarely on that creep Toxer. But Horace gets a thoughtful look, like he has just realized someone important is missing. Jack then looks around the cave, asking where the other woman, Phi, has disappeared to. A wave of panic hits the group as they realize she has vanished without a single trace. This scene cuts to a vast, lonely desert under the dead of night. And look who it is, the boss man, trudging through the sand and whining about Horace ruining his life. He is already plotting his comeback, scheming about how to gather new forces now that Jack is gone. Suddenly, a voice from behind calls his plans foolish, and he nearly jumps out of his skin. It is Phi, the missing party member, and she looks absolutely disgusted with this guy. His shock turns to slimy confidence as he claims she promised to be his woman, delusion level 100. She just scoffs from a dune, asking why she'd ever choose him when she is only here for a purification. A burst of power erupts as she reveals his true sin. He dared to insult the Sphinx's chosen one. And just like Isis, she summons the spiritual Sphinx, which looms over him like the literal god of death. This guy's face just melts into pure, unadulterated terror. The bill has come due. He immediately hits the dirt, begging for forgiveness now that he realizes he picked a fight with an actual god. Phi turns away, declaring that what he did is completely unforgivable. Looking down at him, she says there is no need to even gauge his worth. He has already failed. Suddenly, a massive scorpion tail looms right over the terrified boss man's head. It smacks him right across the face as he identifies it as a death stalker, a bit late for that. Now on the ground, he looks around in confusion as something else stirs in the sand nearby. His face is pure shock, finally realizing he is not the one in control of this situation anymore. She just coldly informs him he is no longer needed and can just die from the poison. Her form then seems to melt away into the desert shadows, leaving him completely alone. Immediately, Toxer starts coughing his lungs out as the fast-acting venom takes hold. He stares in horror at his hand, which is now covered in black, poisoned blood. With blood streaming from his mouth, the guy is in full-blown panic mode, realizing this is the end. His gaze lifts to see not one but *2* giant scorpion tails ready to strike. All his bravado vanishes as he starts pathetically begging for his life. What a turnaround. He is desperately thinking he cannot possibly die out here in the middle of nowhere, but his body gives out, collapsing into the sand as the paralysis sets in. Something starts dripping on his head, and it is definitely not a sudden desert rainstorm. A horrifying giant scorpion monster, the real Deathstalker, looms over his helpless body. Its terrifying maw opens wide as he screams for it to stop, his final moments pure terror. This desert goes silent under the moonlight, with only a faint sound echoing across the dunes. Back in the cave, Horace suddenly looks up, calling out Phi's name with a worried expression. And just like that, Phi is back, holding Horace and asking where he'd run off to. She gives him the clean version of events. Toxer got eaten by desert monsters because the weak perish. Horace just quietly accepts her story, though his eyes tell you he is not buying it completely. Shaking it off, he gets everyone's attention, ready to move on to the next step. This plan is simple: get back to the castle and take care of the unconscious grunts left behind. He announces he will guide them with his sand magic, pointing the way through the desert. And by guide, he means opening a massive sand vortex for some express travel, as you do. Inside their sand shelter, one of the girls creates a light to keep them warm for the night. Horace then turns to their 2 newest additions, looking a little hesitant. He asks Jack and the little girl if they are sure about coming, but they insist they have nowhere else to go. Jack starts to call him Master, and Horace immediately shuts that down. Not happening, buddy. He decides they will save the heavy conversations for tomorrow, which is probably wise. Upon arrival, his companion is just stunned by the magnificent castle Horus has built. This guy starts thanking him for everything and calls him king, which makes Horus absolutely lose it. He is frantically waving his hands, insisting this is not his country, total denial mode. His companion is just confused, asking if he is sure about that. This man points out it has an oasis, resources, and even friendly monsters. It is a perfect spot. He then seriously suggests that Horus should just go ahead and found his own nation here. Our boy is just stunned silent, the sheer weight of that idea hitting him like a truck. But he pushes it aside, saying for now he just wants to talk with everyone, no nation building today. Horus is still processing the whole king thing, admitting it is a separate issue from whether it is a good idea. Morja points out the obvious flaw: if they become a nation, everyone will know and they will have way more enemies. This guy who suggested it immediately sees her point, looking a little sheepish now. He apologizes for overstepping, but she says no, it is an important topic they need to discuss. This next day, the cat girl cheerfully greets Horus and Persia, announcing their arrival. She is practically buzzing with excitement, promising her big brother is going to love her big plan. Her companion asks if they can be hired as guards, but she has a much bigger proposal. She just casually suggests they build an adventurers guild here with her friend as the guild master. Horus and the other guy just stare, their brains completely short-circuiting at the sudden career change. Then it sinks in and they both yell Adventurers Guild, in perfect, horrified unison. With a confident smile, the cat girl confirms her friend Suim is going to be the new guild master. This two of them are still just blinking, trying to catch up to a conversation that left the station 5 minutes ago, and once again they are just shouting Guild, Master, because the idea is just that wild. Horus desperately tries to pump the brakes, asking for an explanation because this is getting out of hand. She just waves her hands, telling everyone to calm down and think about the mutual benefits here. Her pitch is simple: Horus gets a safe home, Suim gets a promotion, and she opens a new trade route. If Horus establishes a country, her company's trade will make it safer and more prosperous for everyone. Suim meekly points out he is only a B-rank adventurer, so jumping to guild master is a bit of a leap. But she has already decided it is a win-win, securing her company's monopoly on the desert's resources. Horus finally cuts in, asking what the hell the point of a guild is if it only takes jobs from her company. This cat girl lays out her reasoning. Her company is basically on its last legs, so this is a huge gamble. She genuinely does not get why Horus is so hesitant, asking him to just think it through. This whole place, she argues, was built around him and is the perfect foundation for a new nation. Her logic is that having a country gives everyone a shared responsibility, which is a good thing. She starts rattling off the names of everyone who is already on board: Isis, Mel, Einfi, and Morja. And just like that, it hits him. She is asking him to build a nation with her. Suddenly, a new blonde girl grabs his hands, passionately declaring they should build the greatest kingdom together. Horus's brain just blue screens, completely unable to process this sudden, intense proposal. This guy who started this whole mess chimes in, saying this is actually a great opportunity, thanks dude. Morja just smirks, saying she was thinking the exact same thing and that this timing is perfect. Now even the new recruits are getting hyped, with the little girl asking if Horus is becoming a king. This whole crew is gathered as someone yells, of course he is. Peer pressure level, nation building. Looking over his very enthusiastic followers, Horus is suddenly joined by a tiny sand doll on his shoulder. Our boy just stares at the little sand creature, completely bewildered by its sudden appearance. He leans in for a closer look and something about it seems off, then it finally registers and he just screams, "Who are you?" at the tiny doll, which is just chilling. Meanwhile, high atop the castle, the source of the commotion is revealed. This little sand doll is just happily waving its arms, completely unbothered by the chaos it caused. Morja calmly informs a still panicking Horus that it is not just a doll, it is a sandman. This other girls are already fawning over it, calling it a sand spirit drawn to his immense power. Morja explains that sandmen are fickle spirits of good fortune, only showing up for people they like. Our boy just looks at the little guy, a bit charmed by his new, very persistent shoulder companion. This tiny sand doll seems to be thanking him, looking incredibly serious for a blob of sand. Suddenly, the little spirit starts waving its arms frantically at Fi, who is just like, what? It starts patting Horus's cheek as he asks Fi if she is upset, completely missing the point, my dude. Fi just stares, a single thought crossing her mind: the little guy needs a name. Horus then suggests they should probably give it a name since it is clearly decided to adopt him. Holding the little creature in his palm, he tries to think of something fitting for it. He lands on the name Su, and the little sand doll seems to be totally on board. Su is absolutely ecstatic, waving its arms around like it just won the spiritual lottery. Horus wonders if it'll transform like his other companions, but nope, no sudden changes here. And Su is just vibing, striking a pose like the world's cutest, most unbothered spirit. Fi points out that you cannot exactly turn away a desert spirit that has chosen you, it is just not done. Our boy is just stammering, completely overwhelmed by everyone's sudden faith in him. He is internally spiraling, questioning if they are really okay with an exiled prince becoming their king. Just then Suim and his crew show up, wondering what all the commotion is about so early. Jack, the guy who started this whole mess, gets everyone's attention with a booming shout. He announces that if Horus is building a nation, then he is founding an adventurers guild, and asks who is with him. His former party members are instantly on board, and Horus just thinks, Well, that was easy. Jack looks over with a determined smirk, ready to build something new from the ground up. Horace is just processing the sheer insanity of the last 5 minutes finally catching up to him. With a new resolve, he finally steels himself, no more running from this destiny. Looking out at all his companions, he sees the people who have put their faith in him. And then he just yells it, declaring he is going to build a kingdom of sand right here. His followers are all standing by, looking absolutely ready to build a nation from scratch. This declaration echoes across his sand-built castle. It is official, folks. He is fully committed now, believing that with everyone together, they can actually pull this off. Their goal is set. Build the greatest nation the world has ever seen, no pressure. Meanwhile, back in the Maghreb Empire, a very grumpy emperor is getting impatient on his throne. This is Emperor Shahryar Maghreb, and he is furious that his people still have not found Morja. A soldier reports that a massive search is underway, only to get yelled at for his trouble. This woman beside him calls Morja trash, and the emperor just snaps at her. Family drama, love to see it. He is seething that Morja was the only one who cared about that useless sand player, aka his exiled son Horus. What is worse, he cannot even figure out how she escaped since her room was warded against teleportation. Just then, a guard announces the arrival of General Wills, and the emperor begrudgingly lets him in. A knight in shining armor steps into the throne room, ready to make his report. This is Wills, commander of the 5th Night Division, looking every bit the loyal soldier. He reports that the rebellion in Asbel has been successfully crushed, because of course it has. This emperor praises his work, telling him to keep serving the nation, a real model employee. But a close-up on Will's eye suggests he might have some reservations about his boss. Back in the Empire, Wills is going on about his future wife Morja and where she has disappeared to. His expression is just a little bit unhinged, in a totally healthy way. And by searching, he means a full-blown manhunt is underway for the runaway princess. This guy then apologizes to the emperor for getting ahead of himself, wanting to be the hero who finds her. Changing the subject, he mentions they are also dealing with a major dungeon problem. Apparently, some dungeon has gotten way out of control and they cannot clear it without a massive campaign. He takes a sip of wine, looking like he is plotting 5 different kinds of world domination. Then he declares the next time he hears from Morja, it'll be at their wedding, not a request, by the way. This woman he was talking to just collapses in despair as he walks away. All he wants, at the very least, is to know if she is even still alive. And speaking of people with problems, Horus is getting a wake-up call from the cat girl Persia. It is a brand new day in their newly founded Sand Nation. Our boy slowly wakes up, probably wondering if yesterday was just a fevered dream. His first sight upon waking is, well, it is a very prominent view he was not expecting. It is Isis, the blonde girl, who has decided he is the world's best pillow and he is trying not to move an inch. She is sleeping so peacefully, completely unaware of his internal panic attack. This realization hits him and his brain just completely short-circuits. It is Isis. But wait, there is more. He feels something soft in his hand under the blanket. And yup, that is Morja on his other side, with his hand in a very asterisk compromising position. To complete the set, Fi is clinging to his other arm. He has been completely surrounded in his sleep. Looking over his sand-built city, Horus reflects on how this all started with just him. With Persia and her crew having already headed out, the remaining adventurers are helping out. Suim and the kids who stayed behind are working hard to develop the new nation. Something catches his attention and he turns, little Sue still perched on his shoulder. This local kids are already calling him king, eagerly offering to lend a hand. He is out helping them with farm work and they are all like, "Your Majesty, you should not be doing this." Our boy just smiles, getting absolutely bombarded with "Your Majesty" from every direction. Internally, he is still not quite used to the whole king thing, not even a little. This fruits of their labor are already showing, with crops growing in the middle of the desert. As the kids thank him, he notices one of them is just staring at him, intensely. And by intensely, I mean she is literally drooling. Someone's got a major crush. Horus has absolutely no idea how to process this level of adoration, looking totally lost. She is just lost in her own little world, fantasizing about the cute king while someone tries to snap her out of it. He recognizes her as Pool, a water mage from Suim's party, and concludes she is a little weird. Snapping out of her daze, Pool insists the kids are perfectly safe with her. Sure they are. Deciding it is time for a break, Horus gets called boss by a new spiky-haired guy. This guy, Regu, is looking for a job and seems more than ready to get to work. Horus points out the guild is not even built yet, so there are no official requests. Regu's not picky though, he is happy to go hunting or tackle a dungeon if needed, and that gets Horus thinking. Dungeons mean exploration, adventurers, and maybe some hidden treasures. Horus is suddenly getting really into this whole dungeon idea, treasure, exploration, what is not to love. Just then the main crew rolls up and Isis calls him Your Majesty, wanting to have a chat. Our boy immediately gets flustered, telling her to knock it off with the formal titles. He is practically begging, saying the formality feels way too distant and he absolutely hates it. Isis seems a little taken aback, realizing he genuinely prefers how they used to talk, so with a soft smile she just calls him by his name, Horus, which is all he wanted. And just like that, he is all smiles again, totally relieved they're back on a first-name basis. Meanwhile, Morja is teasing Fi, welcoming her back to the #1 heroine race. Oh, this is a competition now. Fi is absolutely not amused, but Morja just smirks, saying it is good to have things back to normal. Completely missing the subtext, Horus just asks what they needed to talk to him about. Morja gets right to the point. If this is a country, it is gonna need a name, and they came to him for ideas. Our boy is stumped, stroking his chin and trying to brainstorm a name for their brand new nation. Coming up with nothing, he throws the question to the crowd, asking if anyone else has a good idea. Ein and the others start pondering the question, trying to come up with something fitting for their new home. Then Ein pipes up with a suggestion: why not just name it after their king, the Horus Kingdom? Fi immediately shoots that down, pointing out his full name would become Horus of the Horus Kingdom, a branding nightmare. This little cat girl, Gretel, chimes in with Hor Kingdom, which sounds less than majestic. She immediately realizes her mistake and starts panicking, yelling that it sounds like a terrible joke. With that idea vetoed, Horus turns to Isis for her input, who seems to be deep in thought. Suddenly, her eyes light up with an idea and she declares the perfect name: Sieg, Your Majesty. Isis is passionately shutting Fi down, declaring her suggestion is an absolute no-go, Your Majesty. Meanwhile, the kids are just shouting random ideas: Su Kingdom, King Kingdom, and my personal favorite, Pancake Kingdom. Feeling herself, Isis smugly declares that her plan is clearly the best one, a real stroke of genius. Her brilliant idea is to name it as expected of my brother Kingdom, which is not a name, it is a cry for help. Gretel just collapses in utter defeat while Morja looks on, completely over this brainstorming session. Stepping in to save everyone, Morja offers a single, much more serious name: Balamora. Horus quietly repeats the name, actually giving this one some serious thought for a change. This others are totally lost, asking what Balamdora even means, but it seems to have a nice ring to it. Morja explains it is the name of an ancient royal line, perfect for a kind and powerful king. With little Sue on his shoulder, Horus looks out over his new home and decides he really likes it. And so it is declared, from this day forward, their nation shall be known as Balamdora. One of the kids immediately volunteers to be the town crier, ready to spread the news. She dashes off through the streets, shouting the new name for all to hear. This little messenger runs with pure joy, letting everyone know their home finally has an identity. Her announcement echoes through the sand-built city as adventurers and citizens hear the news. And just like that, the kids are happily playing on a golem. Life in Balamdora is already looking pretty good. Horus mentions they cannot do much more until Persia gets back, but Morja tells him not to rush. Then she just casually wraps herself around him from behind, getting very asterisk close. She whispers that if he is bored, he is welcome to entertain himself with her assets. Morja just gives him this look, basically asking why he is hesitating. The offer is on the table, my dude. Morja goes all in, admitting naming the country was just an excuse to get his attention. She then asks if the little girl from this morning was really enough for him. The jealousy is palpable. To be blunt, she says her body is feeling more than a little receptive right now. Leaning in, she whispers that he is her asterisk master, completely ignoring his flustered protests. Then with a sly look, she pivots, asking if he wants to go clear a dungeon together. Horus is completely thrown, recalling the last time she used magic was for water management. He tries to play it cool, saying his body's a bit sluggish, but the desert has plenty of dungeons. Already his mind is on strategy, planning to gather materials for negotiating with the cat people. Morja just gives him this smug little smile, knowing she's got him wrapped around her finger. And then she is all over him, suggesting a body warmed up by a dungeon is perfect for continuing things at night. But Isis immediately crashes the party, declaring her brother is sleeping with her tonight, case closed. Not to be outdone, Fi literally drops in from the ceiling, telling Morja not to get careless, the race is on. With that chaotic energy, we cut to the vast, open desert for a change of scenery. Their ride is a massive sand whale golem cruising through the dunes like an absolute unit. Morja takes a quiet moment, looking out over the endless sand, probably plotting her next move. This whole crew's assembled, including a new horned guy complaining about being the pack mule. Welcome to the team, buddy. Regu and his party are seriously impressed, admitting they totally underestimated sand magic's utility. Isis puffs out her chest, smugly declaring that of course it is amazing her brother is the ruler of sand. Gretel points out he is actually recognized by the sand spirits, so Isis is not technically wrong, much to her rival's annoyance. Meanwhile, Horus is just trying to exist in the back with Sue as the big guy strikes up a conversation. All the while, Sue is perched on his shoulder, looking like the most determined little spirit marshmallow. Elsewhere, a random sand spirit is literally picking a fight with a rock formation for looking at it funny. This team's journey takes them through a canyon of jagged, imposing spires. They are carefully navigating a narrow cliffside path, warned that the sandstone is dangerously unstable. Horus gives Gretel a hand, helping the little cat girl leap safely across a chasm, but their scenic walk is cut short as both he and Morja look up, sensing trouble from below. And what do you know, a rock golem is scaling the cliff to say hello violently. Without missing a beat, Regu and the horned dude leap into action to intercept the monsters. Another one of the golems takes a dive right towards Horus, aiming to turn him into a pancake. Our boy just counters with a swirling sand shield, completely obliterating the golem before it can even land. Sue just watches from his perch, looking entirely too serious for a creature his size. Horus calmly observes the chaos, figuring this is just your standard desert dungeon welcome party. Finally, they arrive at the dungeon entrance, a massive, classic-style pyramid. With the whole squad assembled, they head inside, ready to take on whatever's waiting for them. A new kid with goggles named Search volunteers to take point, eager to serve his king. Horus gives him the nod, officially making him the party's scout for this little expedition. It does not take long for Search to halt the group, sensing immediate danger just ahead. He points out the hallway is a classic trap room with arrow holes lining the walls. One look at the tiled floor confirms it, one wrong step and they are all about to become pincushions. This other cat girl in the party looks on nervously, asking how they are supposed to get through this. Search explains that with these kinds of arrow traps there is usually a disarm switch on the wall, but Horus has a much simpler solution: just plug every single hole with a giant wave of sand. Search is completely stunned by this brute force approach, while Morja just smirks at the sheer audacity. Our boy gives Search a thumbs up, telling him he did a great job spotting the trap in the first place. Totally fired up, Search declares he is going to find every single trap in this dungeon for his king, and just like that he is already on to the next one, pointing out a classic pitfall trap. He warns everyone to watch out for landmines, telling them to follow his exact footsteps. To prove his point, someone tosses a small rock onto a pressure plate to test the theory. And a volley of massive spears immediately shoots out from the wall, barely missing Horus. Horus then points out the next asterisk problem, telling them to hurry before the ceiling crushes them all. After that absolute gauntlet of traps, they finally reach a massive barred gate blocking the way. Peeking through the bars, Horus and Morja try to get a look at what is waiting for them on the other side. And in the darkness, they spot something truly unexpected. It is a ridiculously muscular dude with a treasure chest for a head, beckoning them forward, a treasure macho. This whole party just stares as this thing strikes a pose, showing off its considerable assets. It just keeps flexing in the distance, completely owning the room with its sheer, baffling energy. Horus and Gretel are just speechless, trying to process what in the world they are even looking at. Suddenly, Ein the armored knight steps forward to confront the beast, spear at the ready. But Ein is not confused, he is furious glaring at the treasure macho with pure unadulterated contempt. And then he just explodes, screaming that the monster has the audacity to show off its muscles in his presence. This treasure macho's chest head starts to creak open, much to everyone's absolute bewilderment. And then it just starts flexing its abs because of course it does, this is its whole personality. Ein is just staring, completely losing his mind over this display of raw, unadulterated gains. He grinds his teeth, muttering that this thing has some serious audacity to be so shredded in his presence. Gripping his spear tightly, he decides this personal insult simply will not stand. He roars that he will absolutely not be outmuscled in a fight and charges forward. But the monster just casually reaches into its own head like it is a gym bag and pulls out a pair of dumbbells to block Ein's spear. This is not a drill. Ein's brain completely short-circuits at the sight of this ridiculous weapon choice. This whole party is just slack-jawed, yelling dumbbells. Because what else can you even say? Yep, those are definitely some high-quality, monster-grade free weights right there. With a mighty swing, the treasure macho prepares to deliver a world of hurt. And it connects hard, sending Ein flying across the room with a brutal-looking hit. Horus looks on in horror as more treasure chests suddenly materialize behind the main boss. Its head then pops open completely, unleashing a blinding flash of light. And now it is literally raining dumbbells from the sky. This dungeon is a health and safety nightmare. Gretel panics about the dumbbell rain as Horus quickly preps some sand magic to shield them. He throws up a massive iron sand shield, blocking the ridiculous onslaught of workout equipment. Furious that his friends are in danger, he channels his magic into a giant iron sand fist and delivers a colossal punch right into the monster's stupid treasure chest face. This impact absolutely demolishes the room, sending dust and debris flying everywhere. When the dust finally settles, all that is left is a field of cracked and broken stone. Lying in the rubble is the treasure macho, completely taken out by that one massive punch. Its head just clatters to the floor, now nothing more than a regular old treasure chest. Regu is hyped, cheering for his boss, while Horus is still processing that he actually won. Meanwhile, Ein has a spiritual awakening, realizing that true strength comes from magic-infused muscles. From inside the chest, their pack mule Horse pulls out a dumbbell-shaped bottle, looking very confused. This whole crew gathers round, trying to figure out what kind of weird potion comes in a dumbbell. Before anyone can stop him, the horse just starts chugging the whole thing down, much to Isis's horror. He finishes the bottle with a look of pure, unadulterated satisfaction, a connoisseur of mystery liquids. Isis is absolutely losing it, watching her companion make some very questionable life choices, and then the horse just explodes with muscle, transforming into a ridiculously shredded beast. Both Horus and Isis are just screaming in terror at this sudden, horrifying display of gains. This camera pans lovingly over his newly acquired bulging bicep, then it moves down to his ridiculously chiseled thigh muscles, and of course we get a gratuitous close-up of the rock-hard 8-pack abs. This absolute unit of a horse strikes a pose, showing off his new and terrifying physique. Horus and his sister are still just screaming, completely traumatized by the buff horse. Isis is in tears, mourning her cute little companion, who is now flexing proudly in the background. As they leave, Regu says he likes the new look, but Isis insists the potion will wear off eventually. Horus's head snaps up, sensing another rumble approaching them from down the hall. And just like that, something absolutely massive comes crashing down the corridor with a roar. A goddamn power elephant monster smashes through the wall, ready to turn them into paste. Its tusks are practically scraping the walls as it barrels towards the party. Regu starts panicking, yelling that the thing is way too big to dodge in this narrow hallway. But then a single powerful hoof steps forward to meet the challenge head-on. It is the buff horse Raku stepping up to be the party's new frontline tank. He literally just stops the charging elephant dead in its tracks with his bare hands, or hooves. Straining with every fiber of his being, the horse holds the line against the furious beast. Then he just hoists the entire elephant over his head for a pro wrestling finisher. This impact of the suplex shakes the entire dungeon to its very foundations. Standing tall in the dust, the horse proves that gains are the ultimate weapon. Regu is losing his mind, cheering for the German suplex as Raku strikes a victory pose. A random fluffy sheep monster just watches, its tiny brain completely unable to process this. But just as quickly the potion wears off and Raku deflates back to his normal self. Morja calmly notes the effects wore off while Isis looks absolutely relieved. Isis smothers her horse in a tearful hug, telling him he is way cuter without the terrifying abs. With that little crisis averted, they continue down another long, ominous corridor. Regu points out the dungeon feels way bigger on the inside, which is never a good sign. Morja just smirks, explaining that bigger spaces mean much stronger monsters are waiting. And Morja's not worried, casually noting that with their king around, this should be no problem at all. Their path opens into yet another ridiculously grand hallway because this dungeon has an unlimited architecture budget. At the far end, the whole party stares up at a door so massive it is almost insulting. Regu immediately clocks it, telling Horus a gate this dramatic can only mean one thing: mid-boss fight. As the heavy lock groans open, it is confirmed whatever's in here is the dungeon's halfway point bouncer, and their opponent is a hulking, bandaged-up mummy already striking a pose like it is auditioning for something. Horus just deadpans it is a mummy, while Gretel hides behind him, wanting absolutely no part of this. Morja's all business, rallying the others to just crush the monster quickly so they can move on. Not wasting a second, the mummy drops into a low stance, winding up for its first attack, and fires off a spiraling projectile from its arm, basically a weaponized roll of toilet paper. This thing launches with some serious velocity, heading straight for the party's frontline. But the dark-haired swordsman steps in, catching the bandage bullet with his reinforced gauntlet. With the attack neutralized, Regu and Search seize the opening and charge straight at the mummy. This monster crosses its arms to defend as the two fighters leap in for the kill. But it is the swordsman who gets there first, his blade slicing through the air in a clean arc. He looks stunned for a second, realizing his sword only cut through the bandages, not flesh. And that was a huge mistake because the mummy immediately grabs his sword arm, locking him in place. His face says it all, he is completely caught, realizing he just walked right into a trap. While holding him fast, the mummy reels back its other fist, preparing to deliver a knockout blow. All the swordsman can do is yell as the monster's punch comes hurtling right for his face. Horus and Morja scream Ein's name, watching their teammate about to get absolutely rocked. This mummy's fist blurs forward with incredible speed, aiming to take him out. But it is a feint as the monster's arm stretches past Ein like a whip. Ein looks back in total shock, realizing he was just bait for the real attack, because the actual target was Horus, who barely dodges the surprise long-range punch. Thinking fast, Horus orders Morja to prep a diamond sand shield and get everyone to safety. He then unleashes a sand blast of his own, knocking Ein clear of the immediate danger. This mummy, now just a core wrapped in a few bandages, has gone all in on that one attack. And Horus is ready to answer with his own signature move, a giant adamantine sand fist. It comes crashing down with enough force to completely obliterate the monster. This impact is absolutely devastating, kicking up a huge cloud of dust and rubble. When the dust finally settles, the mummy is just a crumpled heap in a massive crater. It gives a final dramatic thumbs up before dissolving into dust, a true professional to the end, leaving behind the obligatory mid-boss treasure chest as a parting gift. Gretel is super proud of her brother's victory, while Morja's just hoping for some decent loot. With a little asterisk pop asterisk, the chest creaks open to reveal its contents, and inside is a ridiculously flashy championship-style belt, sparkling with untold power. Regu immediately loses his mind over how cool it is, while the girls look completely unimpressed. He straps it on and starts flexing, feeling a surge of power as Horus just sweats nervously. Totally energized by his new accessory, he tells his boss he is ready for whatever's next. Regu is absolutely feeling himself with his new belt, declaring he is ready to fight anything. Meanwhile, Isis is laying down the law for Raku, no more mystery muscle potions ever. With the mid-boss down, the path opens up to a staircase leading to the next floor. But as they ascend, Horus suddenly feels an intense wave of heat, and it is not a good sign, because they have stepped out of a stone dungeon and into a massive, endless desert. Both he and Gretel are completely baffled, wondering how they possibly ended up outside. Morja casually explains this is just a dungeon feature, an indoor desert with a fake sky. Horus warns everyone to stay alert, noting this heat feels even worse than a real desert. And yeah, the girls are already at their limit, basically melting from the oppressive temperature. One of them starts fanning her clothes, complaining that it is way hotter than it has any right to be. Horus immediately gets flustered by the display while Morja just smirks at his reaction. She then starts pouring water on herself, asking the king to forgive her for being so undignified. This is followed by a very strategic camera angle, because of course it is. Our boy is completely short-circuiting, asking his companion where he is even supposed to look now. Regu points out the obvious problem: this desert is way too huge to navigate. So Horus steps up, placing his hand on the ground to use his sand perception magic. His senses spread out across the entire desert floor like a massive radar pulse, and in an instant, he gets a hit on something important. He points them in the right direction, announcing he has found a spring where they can rest. Regu, ever the loyal subordinate, volunteers to scout ahead and make sure the area is safe. Morja casually wonders if some muscle-bound monster is gonna pop up out here too, and right on cue, a giant sandfish leaps out, which she calls nothing more than fodder. Horus just stares, probably wondering why this dungeon has a dedicated fishing level. Meanwhile, Regu is booking it across the sand, having run way too far ahead. This others try to listen in, but he is so far away they cannot make out his words. He crests a dune with a triumphant yell, clearly having found something important, and that something is a colossal sand monster erupting from below as he screams for them to run. Gretel is absolutely panicking, asking if it is a sand giant or some ancient curse. An enormous fist of sand comes hurtling down, aiming to flatten Horus on the spot. But our boy declares he has got this, ready to fight sand with more sand. He stands his ground against the towering beast, preparing to unleash his own magic. His logic is simple: if the monster is sand, then his sand magic should control it. A complex magic circle forms in front of him, a shield meant to neutralize the attack. But the giant's fist slams into his barrier, and Horus is stunned that he cannot hold it. From the sidelines, Regu points out the obvious: the attack is not working at all. Horus is sweating bullets, his hand shaking as his own magic fails him completely. Then the shield just shatters, the monster's attack blowing right through his defense.